the day I got a bonus at work, my husband's sister called me and said, "You need to buy me a car. It's the least you can do." My husband just shrugged and said, "She's family, just do it." I smiled and said, "Sure, I'll get you something even better." Her smile disappeared when she opened the envelope and saw what I really gave her. I work a tough job in finance. I deal with numbers, deadlines, and a lot of stress. The job pays well, but it's not easy. I've had many sleepless nights, missed weekends, and cut short vacations because of work. But it all felt worth it when I finally got a big bonus, $30,000. I was proud of myself. My husband, Nathan, 38, was happy too. We planned to save most of it and maybe take a vacation. Then came Amanda, 32, his younger sister. Amanda is terrible with money. She's never had a real job and always jumps from one failed business idea to another. One year she was selling overpriced oils. Another year she was trying to be a life coach, with no real experience. Even though she's always broke, she still gets her nails done, buys the latest phones, and carries fancy handbags. She never pays for her own car. She always gets someone else to do it, her parents, boyfriends, or guilt-tripping Nathan. I've never liked how she treats him. She uses him, and he lets her. So I wasn't shocked when, just a few hours after I got my bonus, she called. "Amanda, hey, congrats on your bonus, that's amazing." Her voice was fake sweet. She always talked like that when she wanted something. Thanks. I knew something was up. She never calls just to be nice. "Amanda, so, my car's basically dead. You should buy me a car. It's the least you can do." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. Wait, what? "Amanda, you got a big bonus, right? And you don't have kids, so you don't need all that money. It'd be super easy for you to buy me a car. Come on, it's not a big deal." I was shocked. She doesn't even work, and here she was demanding my hard-earned money. Amanda, no, just no. Then Nathan, sitting nearby, looked up and said something that made me furious. "Nathan, she's family, babe, just do it." Like it was no big deal. Like I was supposed to just give thousands of dollars to someone who refuses to work. I looked at him. He just shrugged. Maybe he thought saying yes was easier than arguing. Either way, I was mad. But I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just smiled. You know what, Amanda? You're right. I should get you something, and I will. Something even better. She paused, then got excited. "Amanda, OMG, really? You're the best." Nathan didn't say anything. He just went back to his phone. But I had a plan. The next day, I drove to Amanda's house. She ran outside, smiling. She thought I was there to give her car keys. She thought she had one. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. She looked confused. "Amanda, what's this?" Open it." She tore it open like a kid opening a gift, then silence. Her smile disappeared. "Amanda, what the hell is this?" It's a fully paid financial literacy course, so you can learn to manage money and buy your own car." She looked like her brain broke for a second. "Amanda, are you serious?" Her face turned red, her fists clenched. She looked like she was about to attack me. Then she screamed, loud and sharp. She threw the envelope at me like it was poison. "Amanda, you are such a selfish, evil **tch. Then she slammed the door. I stayed calm, turned around, and walked back to my car. When I got home, Nathan was waiting for me, looking annoyed. "Nathan, babe, was that really necessary?" I laughed at him. Are you serious? You told me to buy her something, right? I just made a better choice." Then, because I wasn't done, I added, "Or did you mean I should just give her thousands of dollars for doing nothing?" His mouth shut right away. But that wasn't the end of it. Oh no, Amanda wasn't done yet, and she was about to make things worse. I thought she'd just yell and move on. I was wrong. Because Amanda? She doesn't accept no very well. The next morning, I woke up to 20 missed calls, from Amanda, from Nathan, from my mother-in-law, and even an unknown number. My texts were full of angry messages. I scrolled through them, still half asleep. "Amanda, you humiliated me. Amanda, do you think you're better than me? Amanda, I told Mom what you did. She's furious. Nathan, call me, we need to talk. Unknown number, you're disgusting. I hope you lose everything." Turns out Amanda had posted on Facebook, twisting the whole story to make herself look like the victim. The post said, Money makes people heartless. My own sister-in-law, who just got a big bonus, refused to help me when I needed her. My car's dying, and I asked for help, not for anything fancy, just for a way to get to work. Instead, she gave me a class, like I don't know how to manage money. I've never felt so belittled. I hope karma gets her. The comments were crazy. OMG, what a selfish witch. Money changes people. You deserve better, girl. Some women don't want their husband's family around. Classic manipulation. She's trying to make you feel small. Don't let her. I wanted to throw my phone. The entitlement was shocking. I turned to Nathan, still in bed, scrolling through his phone. Me, did you see what your sister posted? He sighed deeply. Nathan, yeah, she's being dramatic. I'll talk to her. That should have made me feel better, but I knew how these talks went. Nathan would never really stand up to her. He'd try to calm her down, but never say she was wrong. And guess what? Amanda made it worse. Around noon, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law, Deborah. Now, Deborah wasn't as bad as Amanda, but she'd always supported Amanda's behavior. I answered, knowing what it was about. Deborah, sweetheart, we need to talk about what happened. Sweetheart, that fake, syrupy tone she used when she wanted to guilt-trip me. Me, go ahead. Deborah, I think you should apologize. You know how sensitive Amanda is. She felt humiliated. She felt humiliated? She was the one demanding money from me like I was an ATM. Me, she should feel humiliated. She asked for thousands of dollars, and I gave her a way to earn her own money. I don't regret it. Silence. Then Deborah dropped the real reason for the call. Deborah, look, if you don't want to buy her a car, fine, but maybe loan her some money. She'll pay you back. I laughed, like a full body. Are you kidding me? Laugh. Me, Deborah, has Amanda ever paid anyone back? Silence. Deborah, well, no, but. Me, no. The answer is no. More silence. Deborah, I just don't want this to cause tension in the family. Ah, there it was. It wasn't about Amanda, it was about keeping the peace by giving her whatever she wanted. I took a deep breath. Me, Deborah, I love you, but I'm not giving her money, and I'm not apologizing for not being used. Deborah sighed. Deborah, I just wish you'd reconsider. Me, not happening. And I hung up. By evening, Amanda had gone off the deep end. She showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant buzzed in. Assistant, your sister-in-law is here. She says it's an emergency. I stepped outside, and there she was, red-faced, shaking, holding up her phone like it was evidence. Amanda, what the hell is this? I blinked. Me, what? She shoved her phone in my face. It was my own Facebook post. I'd written something earlier after seeing hers. It's funny how some people think family means you owe me money. I worked hard for my success, and I didn't owe anyone anything. If that makes me selfish, fine. The comments on Amanda's post were full of people agreeing with me, and Amanda, she was fuming. Amanda, how dare you make me look bad online? I laughed. Me, oh, sorry, you mean like how you lied about me on Facebook? She opened her mouth, then closed it because she knew I was right, but Amanda doesn't admit when she's wrong. Instead, she crossed her arms and smirked. Amanda, you just made a big mistake. Then she stormed out. After Amanda left my office, I thought it was over. I'd called her out, stood my ground, and made it clear I wasn't going to be bullied into giving her money. But I should have known better. Amanda doesn't just get mad, she gets even, and she was about to make my life miserable. 2 days later, while Nathan and I were having dinner, my phone buzzed with a fraud alert from my bank. Bank rep, we've noticed suspicious activity on your account. Please call us immediately. I almost ignored it, but something didn't feel right, so I called. That's when my stomach dropped. Bank rep, hi, we flagged some unusual transactions. Someone tried to withdraw $5,000 from your account this morning. Me, what? Bank rep, did you authorize this? Me, no, absolutely not. Nathan looked confused as I put the phone on speaker. Me, where was the withdrawal attempted? Bank rep, it was at a downtown branch, but the teller stopped it because the person didn't have proper ID. I felt sick. Someone had walked into a bank and tried to steal $5,000 from my account. Me, do you have a name? Bank rep, yes. The person gave the name Amanda. Nathan froze. I couldn't believe it. Amanda had tried to steal from me. I had no idea how she got my banking info, but this wasn't just rude behavior, this was a crime. I hung up and turned to Nathan. waiting for his reaction. Nathan, no, no way, she wouldn't. Me, she did. Nathan, my bank just told me, are you still going to defend her? His face went pale, and he couldn't say anything. Nathan left the house immediately. I didn't have to tell him where he was going, straight to Amanda's apartment. I was shaking with rage. Amanda had always been selfish and manipulative, but this was something else. 2 hours later, Nathan came home, his face unreadable. He grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat down. Me, well? Nathan sighed. Nathan, she admitted it. My heart raced. Me, she what? Nathan, she said she was just testing something, that she didn't mean to take the money. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. Me, she tried to steal from me, and that's her excuse? Nathan, she swore she wouldn't do it again. She was crying. Mom was there too. She wants you to let it go. I couldn't believe this. Amanda tried to steal thousands of dollars from me, and Deborah still wanted me to keep the peace? I grabbed my purse and stood up. Me, where are you going? Me, to the police. That's when Nathan's face changed. He wasn't angry or surprised, he was scared. Nathan, wait, just wait. There's something I need to tell you. Something in his voice made me sit back down. Me, what? Nathan looked guilty, like he was about to drop a bomb on me. Nathan, Amanda wasn't the only one who had your banking info. I froze. Me, who else had it? Nathan took a deep breath. Nathan, Mom. I blinked. Me, your mom had my banking info? Nathan swallowed hard. Nathan, I might have given it to her a long time ago. She said she needed it for the family phone plan, but she was only supposed to use it for that. My whole world spun. Nathan had given my banking info to his mother, and now Amanda had somehow gotten her hands on it. Me, so you're telling me your family has had access to my money this whole time? Nathan winced. Nathan, I didn't think they'd do anything wrong with it. I felt sick. How could he be so careless? I had spent years dealing with Amanda's entitlement, with Deborah making excuses for her, and this entire time, they had access to my money, and now Amanda had tried to steal from me? I stared at Nathan, my voice shaking with fury. Me, I'm filing a police report, and I'm changing my account. His eyes widened. Nathan, baby, come on, it's just a mistake. Me, a mistake? A mistake is forgetting my birthday, a mistake is leaving the oven on. This was theft from your wife, and you're still defending them. He didn't answer, he knew he couldn't. Nathan stared at me, opening and closing his mouth like he didn't know what to say. I had just told him I was going to the police, that his sister tried to steal from me, that his mom gave Amanda my banking info, and that I was done being nice, but still, Nathan hesitated like he didn't want to face the consequences. That's when I realized, Nathan wasn't on my side. He was still stuck in this delusion that his family could do whatever they wanted, and I'd just take it. Not anymore. I grabbed my keys and my purse. Me, I'm going to the police. Nathan panicked. Nathan, wait, just let me talk to them first. I laughed, actually laughed. Me, talk to them, so they can lie their way out of it? No. I turned to walk out, but Nathan blocked the door. Nathan, please, just give me a chance to fix this. Me, you had a chance. Nathan, you had so many chances. His eyes were desperate, but for the first time, I saw it, he was scared. Not for me, not for Amanda, but for himself, because if I went to the police, his family would be exposed, and so would he. I took a deep breath. Me, fine, you have 24 hours, fix it. I grabbed my things, pushed past him, and walked out. The next evening, Nathan told me he'd arranged a family meeting. I had one condition, it had to be at his parents' house so no one could run away. When we arrived, Amanda was already pacing the room. Deborah sat stiffly on the couch, arms crossed, and Nathan's dad, who usually stayed out of things, stood silently in the corner. Amanda, I don't even know why we're here. I snorted. Me, oh, I think you do. Amanda rolled her eyes. Nathan sat down and ran a hand through his hair. Nathan, okay, we need to talk about what happened. Amanda, nothing happened. Nathan, she's being a psycho. I pulled out my phone. Me, really? Then why did my bank call me about an attempted withdrawal in your name? Amanda's face turned red. Amanda, I was just seeing if it would go through. I wasn't actually taking anything. I laughed. Me, you literally walked into a bank and tried to steal from me. That's called fraud. Amanda looked to Deborah for backup, and like clockwork, Deborah jumped in. Deborah, let's not use words like steal and fraud, okay? This is a misunderstanding. I turned to Nathan. Me, this is what you wanted to fix, them making excuses? Nathan rubbed his face, looking exhausted. Then, for the first time, Nathan's dad spoke. Nathan's dad, did you do it? His voice was low, serious. Amanda froze. That's when I saw how much she feared him. Amanda, I didn't mean to. Nathan's dad, did you do it? Silence. Then she nodded. Nathan's dad exhaled, then turned to Deborah. Nathan's dad, you let this happen. Deborah's eyes widened. Deborah, don't you dare blame me for this. Nathan's dad, you gave her access to their bank info, and you let this girl think she was entitled to their money. Now she's trying to commit fraud. This is your fault. Deborah was stunned, never having been called out before. She turned to Nathan, desperate. Deborah, tell him we were just trying to help Amanda. Nathan was stone-faced. Nathan, Mom, I can't defend this. Amanda shrieked. Amanda, are you kidding me? She turned to me, furious. Amanda, this is your fault. You turned Nathan against me. You ruined everything. And then she lunged at me. I barely had time to react before Nathan's dad grabbed her. Nathan's dad, enough. Amanda screamed like a child being scolded. That's when I realized she wasn't sorry. She was just angry she got caught. I pressed charges. Nathan didn't stop me. Amanda got a slap on the wrist, community service, a fine, and mandatory financial counseling. But the real punishment? Deborah cut her off. Nathan's dad was done. He told Deborah, either you stop enabling Amanda, or I leave. And suddenly, Deborah wasn't so supportive anymore. Amanda moved out. She got a job for the first time in her life. She hated me for it, but I was free. Nathan tried for weeks to fix things, but the truth was, I couldn't forgive him. He had betrayed my trust, not just by giving my banking info to his mom, but by consistently taking their side over mine. One night, after another pointless fight, I finally said it. Me, Nathan, I don't love you anymore. He looked devastated, but he knew. I had spent too many years fighting for a place in his life, and I was done fighting. I moved out. A month later, we didn't have a messy divorce. There were no fights, no lawyers, just quiet paperwork. Nathan texted me one last time after the divorce was finalized. Nathan, I'm sorry for everything. I stared at the screen, then I put my phone down and never answered. Some people think family means obligation, that you should put up with anything just because you share DNA, but I learned something important. Family doesn't mean forever. Respect does. And if someone doesn't respect you, you don't owe them anything. Not your time, not your money, not even your forgiveness. Walking away was the best thing I ever did.
I stood in front of the ornate church mirror, adjusting my maid of honor dress, and mentally calculating the exact amount my parents had stolen from my savings account. $127,843. Money I'd earned through years of careful investment and countless late nights building my consulting business. Isn't this perfect? My sister Madison twirled in her designer wedding gown, the one that cost exactly $23,651 of my money. I still can't believe how everything worked out. Meeting James at that charity gala, and now here we are. I forced a smile, remembering the real story of how she met my business partner. The story she didn't know. Yes, I replied softly. Everything worked out exactly as planned. 6 months earlier, I'd sat across from my parents at our family's weekly dinner, listening in shock as they casually announced they'd borrowed my savings for Madison's wedding. Honey, you understand, Mom had said, patting my hand. Your sister only gets married once, and James comes from such a good family. We couldn't let her have anything less than perfect. You had no right. I'd managed through clenched teeth. That was my money. Don't be selfish, Dad cut in. Madison needs this. Besides, what were you doing with all that money anyway? It's not like you have anything important to spend it on. I'd looked at Madison, waiting for her to say something, anything. But she just sat there, examining her fresh manicure, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. What they didn't know was that those savings had been earmarked for a crucial business expansion. I'd been planning to buy out our biggest competitor, a deal that would have doubled our market share overnight. I can't believe you're being so dramatic about this, Madison had sighed. It's not like you have a wedding to save for. When was your last date anyway? That night, I'd called James, my business partner, and the only person who knew the full extent of my family's emotional manipulation. They took everything, James. The expansion money, my emergency fund, all of it. His voice had been calm, measured. I might have a solution, but you'll have to trust me completely, and it's going to take time. I trust you, I'd said without hesitation. James and I had built our company from nothing, working 80-hour weeks, surviving on coffee and determination. He was the brother I should have had instead of the sister who'd spent her life taking everything from me. Good, he replied, because I'm about to tell you how we're going to take over your family's company, and it starts with me meeting your sister. Now, watching Madison fuss with her veil, I thought about how perfectly James had played his part. The accidental meeting at the charity gala, the whirlwind romance, the proposal that had made headline news. James was, after all, one of the city's most eligible bachelors. My parents had been ecstatic. Their golden child marrying into serious money. It was everything they dreamed of. If only they knew that James's real value wasn't in his personal wealth, but in his shares of our company, Monarch Consulting. Shares that, combined with mine, would give us controlling interest in Anderson & Sons, my family's century-old business, once the merger papers were signed tomorrow morning. Sarah? Madison's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Earth to Sarah. Mom wants to know if you've got the marriage license. She said she gave it to you for safekeeping. I patted my purse, feeling the weight of the envelope inside. Got it right here. What I didn't mention was that nestled beside it was another envelope, one containing merger documents that would transfer control of Anderson & Sons to Monarch Consulting the moment Madison and James said, "I do." A knock at the door interrupted us. Mom bustled in, already dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Oh, my beautiful girls." She hugged Madison carefully, mindful of the expensive dress. Then she turned to me, her smile faltering slightly. "Sarah, dear, couldn't you have done something more with your hair? This is your sister's big day." I touched my elegant chin, the one that had cost $200 at the best salon in town. "It's fine, Mom." "Well, at least you're not completely overshadowing your sister's moment," she sighed. "Though that dress is a bit much, don't you think?" I glanced down at the designer gown I'd chosen specifically because it was more expensive than Madison's. A small petty revenge, but satisfying nonetheless. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes, Mom continued. "Sarah, please try not to trip during the procession, and remember to smile. None of those serious business expressions you always wear." After she left, Madison turned to me, her face suddenly serious. "You are happy for me, aren't you, Sarah? I know you and James work together, and maybe you had a little crush on him." I cut her off with a laugh. "Trust me, Madison. James is exactly where he's supposed to be." My phone buzzed. A text from James. "Everything ready?" "All set," I replied. "See you at the altar." Madison was fixing her makeup one last time when Dad came in. "Princess, it's time." He turned to me. "Sarah, don't forget your part. Simple and dignified, remember?" I nodded, thinking of the other role I'd be playing today, the one that would change everything. As the wedding coordinator lined us up, I felt the weight of both envelopes in my purse. One would make my sister Mrs. James Porter. The other would make me CEO of Anderson and Sons. The organ music began, its triumphant notes filling the massive church. I stepped into line behind the bridesmaids, a small smile playing on my lips. "Ready?" the coordinator whispered. More than ready. I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. The doors opened, and I began my walk down the aisle, past hundreds of guests who had no idea they were about to witness not just a wedding, but a corporate takeover. At the altar, James stood tall and handsome in his tuxedo. He caught my eye and gave me the slightest of nods. Showtime. The ceremony proceeded like a perfectly choreographed dance. Madison floated down the aisle on Dad's arm, guests murmuring appreciatively at her designer gown. In the front row, Mom dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief, the massive diamond rings on her fingers catching the light. Rings bought with profits from the company I was about to take over. When the minister asked for the marriage license, I opened my purse with steady hands. For a moment, I held both envelopes, one containing the license, the other holding the merger documents James had already signed. One would bind my sister in marriage, the other would bind my family's company to mine. I handed over the marriage license, keeping the merger papers close. Their time would come soon enough. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, his voice echoing through the church. I watched James's face as he recited his vows, admiring how perfectly he played his role. Not a single person in the cathedral suspected that this wealthy, charming man was about to help me orchestrate the biggest business coup in our city's history. "I do," Madison said, her voice trembling with emotion. If only she knew what those words would really set in motion. As James slipped the platinum band onto Madison's finger, I felt my phone vibrate silently in my purse. Right on schedule, our lawyers confirming that everything was in place. At the reception, I stood to deliver my maid of honor speech. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with expensive decorations, all paid for with my stolen savings. When Madison first met James, I began, my voice carrying across the perfectly arranged tables. She thought she was the luckiest girl in the world. I paused, letting my eyes meet James's. Little did she know just how special their connection would truly be. The crowd chuckled, interpreting my words as sisterly affection. Only James understood their real meaning. As I sat down, Dad stood up, champagne glass in hand. "Today isn't just about joining two people in marriage," he'd announced proudly. "It's about joining two of the city's most prestigious families, the Andersons and the Porters, a perfect match." I smiled, thinking about how that perfect match would look very different by tomorrow morning. The party was in full swing when my phone buzzed again. The message was from our corporate attorney. "Documents filed. Ready when you are." I caught James's eye across the dance floor and gave a subtle nod. He excused himself from Madison's side and made his way to where the senior partners of Anderson and Sons were gathered. "Gentlemen," I heard him say, "I'd love your advice on something. Could we step into the library for a moment?" I watched them follow him out. These men who had spent years dismissing me despite my Harvard MBA and proven track record. These men who had supported my father's decision to make Madison a vice president straight out of college while I built my own company from scratch. 20 minutes later, I entered the library to find exactly what I expected. A room full of pale-faced men holding copies of the merger documents. This is impossible," my father's voice shook as he looked up from the papers. "James, what is this?" "That," I said, stepping forward, is a legally binding merger agreement between Monarch Consulting and Anderson and Sons. One that gives us controlling interest in your company. But you don't have the authority, one of the partners sputtered. The shareholder agreement clearly states that any marriage between the families automatically triggers the merger clause. James finished smoothly. A clause your lawyers insisted on when they learned of my family's wealth. They just didn't know I was already Sarah's business partner. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You planned this? Both of you? Consider it karma, I said coolly. You took my savings. I'm taking your company. Madison will never forgive you, he threatened. Madison will never know. I corrected him. Unless you want to explain to her how you stole her sister's money to pay for her wedding. How you've been embezzling from the company pension fund to maintain your lifestyle. Oh yes, I added, seeing his expression. We found those records too. The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of the reception. The papers are already filed, James said quietly. The only question is whether you want to handle this transition quietly or make a scene at your daughter's wedding. Dad's hands clenched into fists. Sarah, please. We can work something out. Like how you worked out taking my savings? I asked sweetly. No, Dad. This is happening. The only choice you have is how public you want this to become. One of the partners cleared his throat. Robert, maybe we should discuss this calmly. If what they're saying about the pension fund. Dad's shoulders slumped in defeat. James gathered the signed documents while I stood by the door, watching these powerful men come to terms with their new reality. Oh, and Dad, I said as they filed out. Don't worry about paying me back for the wedding. Consider it a gift, the last one you'll ever get from me. Back in the ballroom, Madison was cutting the massive wedding cake, beaming at the cameras. Mom was showing off the table settings to her friends, bragging about the cost. If they only knew that every crystal glass, every flower arrangement, every perfect detail of this wedding had helped fund their own downfall. I picked up a champagne flute and watched the bubbles rise. By this time tomorrow, I would be CEO of both companies. The empire my grandfather built, that my father nearly destroyed, would be mine. Everything okay? James appeared at my side, his bow tie slightly crooked from the confrontation. Perfect, I replied, straightening his tie. Ready for your honeymoon? He grimaced slightly. 2 weeks in the Maldives with Madison. The things I do for our company. Just think of it as a business investment, I said, raising my glass. To new beginnings. Across the room, Dad was drinking heavily at the bar, his face ashen. Mom was still circulating among the guests, unaware that her world had just shifted on its axis. And Madison? She was exactly where she'd always been, the center of attention, basking in her perfect moment, completely oblivious to the storm about to break. The night was still young, but the real celebration was just beginning. 2 weeks after the wedding, I sat in what had once been my father's office, reviewing the latest financial reports. The view of the city skyline was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits, but everything else had changed. The heavy oak desk where Dad had once dismissed my business ideas was now mine. The wall of photos showing him with celebrities and politicians had been replaced with our company's new vision statement and organizational chart. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Just landed. Heading to the office. Madison's still mad. I'm cutting the honeymoon short for work. I smiled, remembering Madison's Instagram posts from the Maldives. Endless selfies of her living her best life. Completely unaware that her new husband had spent most of the trip on conference calls, helping me restructure both companies. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in." Mom entered, looking smaller somehow without her usual designer outfit and perfectly coiffed hair. "Sarah, we need to talk." I gestured to the chair across from me. The same chair where I'd once sat as Dad lectured me about practical career choices. "How could you do this to your own family?" she demanded, but her voice lacked its usual authority. "Interesting," I said, opening a folder on my desk. "That's exactly what I wondered when I saw these bank statements. Care to explain why you and Dad withdrew $127,843 from my account without permission?" "That was different. It was for your sister's wedding." "No," I corrected her calmly. "It was theft. Just like Dad's creative accounting with the pension fund was theft. The only difference is, I found a legal way to take back what's mine." "By tricking your sister? Using James to what?" "Give her exactly what she wanted. A wealthy husband, a dream wedding, a luxury honeymoon." I leaned forward. Madison got everything she ever wanted. The fact that it helped me get what I wanted to is just good business. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Your father hasn't slept in days. He's talking about moving to Florida, selling the house." "The house is company property," I reminded her. "And yes, you'll need to vacate it by the end of the month." "Where are we supposed to go?" "I hear Madison's guest house is quite comfortable, though you might want to hurry. Once she learns about the company, she might not be feeling very generous." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Madison. "Excuse me," I told Mom. "I need to take this." Mom stood shakily. At the door, she turned back. "We're still family, Sarah." "No," I said softly. "We stopped being family the moment you chose Madison's one perfect day over my entire future." I answered Madison's call on speaker, letting Mom hear as she left. "Sarah." Madison's voice was shrill. "What's going on?" "James is acting weird, saying something about an emergency board meeting. And Dad's not answering his phone." "Don't worry," I said smoothly. "Everything will be explained at the meeting. You should come too. It involves the whole family." 2 hours later, I stood at the head of the conference room table, facing my assembled family and the board of directors. James sat to my right, his expression professionally neutral. "As of this morning," I announced, "the merger between Monarch Consulting and Anderson & Sons is complete. I will be serving as CEO of the combined companies." Madison jumped up. "What? But Daddy, you said I was next in line for CEO." Dad couldn't meet her eyes. James cleared his throat. "Actually, according to the new organizational structure, your position has been eliminated." The color drained from Madison's face as understanding dawned. You married me just to help her take over the company." "The marriage is legal," James said calmly. "And I'll continue to provide for you exactly as agreed in our prenup," which, if you recall, you were too excited to read carefully. Madison turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "My own sister. You ruined everything." "No," I corrected her. "I took back what was mine and built something bigger in the process." "By destroying our family?" I pulled out the bank statements, sliding them across the table. "Our family was destroyed the moment they stole my savings for your wedding. I just decided to stop being the victim and start being the victor." "Mr. Anderson," one of the board members interrupted, "given the circumstances with the pension fund, we believe it's best if you announce your retirement immediately." Dad nodded numbly. Madison looked between our parents in confusion. Pension fund? What pension fund? Ask them, I suggested. Ask them about all the creative accounting they did to maintain their lifestyle. To pay for your cars, your clothes, your perfect wedding. The board members began filing out, leaving our family alone in the wreckage of what we'd once been. You'll regret this, Madison spat, grabbing her designer purse. All of it. Actually, I said, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. After they left, James loosened his tie. Well, that went about as expected. I stood by the window, watching my family exit the building below. Mom and Dad walking slowly, shoulders slumped. Madison storming ahead, already on her phone, probably calling her friends to complain about her evil sister. Any regrets? James asked quietly. I thought about years of being second best, of working twice as hard for half the recognition, of having my dreams dismissed and my savings stolen. Just one, I replied. That I didn't do this sooner. 1 year later, I stood in the same spot, but the view was different. Under my leadership, the merged company had doubled its market share. The pension fund had been fully restored, the corporate culture transformed. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Heard about the company's success. Ready to talk? I deleted it without responding. Some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt. James appeared in my doorway. Board meeting in 5. Ready to show them the expansion plans? I gathered my papers, pausing to straighten a new photo on my wall. One showing me and James at the company's last charity gala. Both of us smiling genuinely at the camera. You know what, James? I've never been more ready. Sometimes revenge isn't just about getting even. Sometimes it's about proving that the people who underestimated you were wrong. That the person they dismissed as second best could become the best. And I had proof. 12 stories of prime real estate, 2 thriving companies merged into an empire, and 1 perfect revenge served exactly the way I'd planned it. Madison got her perfect wedding. I got everything else. And that was the best revenge of all. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the message on my phone. Sorry, sis. Money's tight, and we can't help with the medical bills. You should have been more careful driving in the rain. Mom and Dad agree. You were on your own with this one. My sister Olivia, who lived in our parents' fully paid guest house and drove a Mercedes they'd gifted her for Christmas, was telling me I was on my own. The same sister whose college tuition I'd helped pay when our parents' investments took a hit in 2008. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the constant beeping of monitors and the throbbing pain in my legs. The doctors said I was lucky. The truck that hit me could have killed me. Instead, I was looking at months of rehabilitation and medical bills that would drain every penny I'd saved. Miss Porter? A nurse poked her head in. Your physical therapy session starts in 10 minutes. Do you have someone coming to help you get there? I shook my head, fighting back tears. My family lived less than 20 minutes away, but they hadn't visited once in the 2 weeks since the accident. The nurse's face softened with sympathy. Don't worry, honey. I'll help you. As she helped me into the wheelchair, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with my parents. It was at Olivia's 32nd birthday party, held at their sprawling Victorian house that had been in our family for generations. They'd been bragging about Olivia's new job at a prestigious law firm, a position she'd gotten through Dad's golf club connections. Catherine, Mom had said, sipping her champagne, when are you going to get a real career? This financial consulting business of yours, it's not very stable, is it? If only they knew that my unstable consulting business had helped me build a substantial investment portfolio. I'd kept my success quiet, remembering how they'd ridiculed my decision to strike out on my own, rather than join Dad's firm. The physical therapy session was grueling. Every movement sent shots of pain through my damaged legs, but I gritted my teeth and pushed through. The therapist, Mike, was encouraging but realistic. "You're doing great, Catherine, but recovery will take time. And it's important to have a support system. I have enough savings." I cut him off. "I'll hire whatever help I need." Back in my room, I opened my laptop, determined to at least review some client files. A news alert caught my eye. Morton Financial, my parents' primary investment firm, was facing a liquidity crisis. Their stock had plummeted 60% in a week. I dug deeper, my analyst instincts kicking in. Morton had made risky bets on the real estate market, leveraging their clients' portfolios to buy up distressed properties. Now those investments were imploding. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Only did you see the news about Morton? Mom and Dad are freaking out. They might have to sell the house." I set the phone down without responding. The Victorian house had been our grandfather's pride and joy. He'd built the family's wealth from nothing, but always warned us about the dangers of entitlement. "Money shouldn't change who you are," he used to say. "It just reveals it." How right he'd been. Another message popped up, this time from my best friend and fellow analyst. "David, check your email. Found something interesting about Morton's debt structure." I opened his email and started reading. My eyes widened as I absorbed the implications. Morton's mortgage division had been bundling their loans and selling them to private equity firms at a discount. Among their portfolio was my family's house, the mortgage they'd taken out to fund Olivia's law school, and their lavish lifestyle. A plan began forming in my mind. I might be stuck in this hospital bed, but my brain worked just fine, and I knew exactly how to use that Morton financial crisis to my advantage. "David," I typed, "remember that investment fund we discussed starting? I think it's time, and I know exactly what assets we should acquire first." I looked out my hospital window at the setting sun, a grim smile playing on my lips. My family thought I was helpless, a burden they could discard. They had no idea that while I lay here, allegedly broken and abandoned, I was about to become their worst nightmare. My fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard as I outlined my strategy to David. Morton would be desperate to offload their toxic assets. With the right structure and timing, we could acquire their entire mortgage portfolio for pennies on the dollar, including the mortgage on my family's precious Victorian. A nurse came in to check my vitals. "Your blood pressure's a bit high," she noted with concern. "Try to rest." "I will," I assured her. "I just need to finish something important." On my screen, David's reply appeared. "You're sure about this? It's aggressive." I thought about my sister's dismissive text, my parents' absence, the cold calculation with which they'd abandoned me in my hour of need. "I'm sure," I typed back. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about taking control. I closed my laptop and leaned back against the hospital pillows, finally feeling something other than pain and betrayal. I felt powerful. The next morning, I had David bring me every document he could find on Morton Financial's assets. Between physical therapy sessions and doctor's visits, I pored over financial statements, loan documents, and market analyses. Morton's desperation was evident in the numbers. They needed to raise capital fast, and they were willing to sell their loan portfolios at steep discounts to do it. I called in every favor, contacted every industry connection I'd made over the years. My hospital room became my war room, with David acting as my eyes and ears in the financial world. Morton's starting to approach potential buyers. He reported during one of his daily visits. They're trying to keep it quiet, but word's getting out. I nodded, scrolling through the latest projections on my laptop. Have our LLC ready. Everything needs to be in place when they start accepting bids. Catherine, David hesitated. Your family, they still haven't visited? No, I said shortly. And soon they'll wish they had. My phone lit up with another text from Olivia. Dad's talking about declaring bankruptcy. This is a nightmare. I left it unanswered, just like all her previous messages. Instead, I focused on the document David had brought me, a preliminary term sheet for Morton's distressed asset sale. The pieces were falling into place. While my family worried about losing their precious house, I was preparing to become their anonymous creditor. Sometimes recovery takes more than just physical healing. Sometimes it requires rebuilding yourself into someone stronger, someone who can never be abandoned or betrayed again. And as I lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by financial documents and powered by determination, I was doing exactly that. 2 months after the accident, I sat in my wheelchair in a sleek downtown office, watching as David finalized our bid for Morton Financial's distressed assets. My legs were healing, but my heart had hardened into something unbreakable. Phoenix Capital Management, I murmured, reading the name on our newly registered investment firm's documents. Rising from the ashes, David looked up from his computer. Final offers ready. $85 million for their entire mortgage portfolio. About 30 cents on the dollar. I nodded, remembering the conversation I'd overheard between 2 nurses last week. They'd been discussing my sister Olivia's appearance on local news, speaking as a concerned citizen about Morton Financial's collapse. She'd been wearing the diamond necklace our parents gave her for passing the bar exam. The same week they told me they couldn't help with my student loans. Send it, I said. While we waited for Morton's response, I focused on my recovery. Physical therapy was still excruciating, but I channeled every stab of pain into determination. The doctors were amazed by my progress. Whatever's driving you, Mike, my therapist, said during one particularly tough session, it's working. If he only knew. The call from Morton came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. They accepted our bid with minimal negotiation. Desperation had made them eager. Within hours, Phoenix Capital Management became the proud owner of over 500 mortgages, including the one on my family's Victorian. I celebrated that night with a painkiller and a spreadsheet, meticulously reviewing each loan in our newly acquired portfolio. Most would be restructured or sold off, but some would receive special attention. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Morton had announced the sale of their mortgage division to an anonymous investment firm. My family was panicking. Mom, they sold our mortgage. What if the new company raises our rates? Olivia, Dad's meeting with bankruptcy lawyers tomorrow. This is insane. Dad, Catherine, I know we haven't been there for you, but I need your financial expertise. Call me. I deleted them all without responding. David stopped by later with takeout and updates. The transfer's complete. You now officially own your family's debt. I took a bite of lo mein, savoring both the taste and the moment. Had our management company send out the standard notification letters. And David, make sure my family's includes the new, adjusted terms. You're really going to do it. They made their choice when they abandoned me, I said, my voice steady. Now it's my turn to make mine. The next week, as I graduated from wheelchair to walker, my family received their letter from Phoenix Capital Management. Their mortgage rate was being adjusted to the maximum legally allowable amount, effectively doubling their monthly payment. The explosion was immediate. Catherine, Olivia burst into my hospital room unannounced, waving the letter. You have to help us figure this out. Mom's having anxiety attacks. Dad can't sleep. I looked at her designer purse, her perfect manicure, her face flushed with self-righteous concern. I thought I wasn't your problem. She flinched. That's not fair. We were dealing with our own crisis. While I was dealing with paralysis, I cut in. Alone. We're family, she protested. Are we? Because family doesn't abandon each other in hospitals. Family doesn't ignore calls for help. Family shows up. Tears welled in her eyes. What happened to you? You change. I smiled coldly. No, I just stopped accepting less than I deserve. After she left, I had David send another letter to my parents. This one detailed Phoenix's new policy on late payments. There would be no grace period, no exceptions. That evening, my father called. Catherine, please. We need your help understanding these financial terms. Maybe you could talk to the new company, explain our situation, like you explained my situation to them when I needed help. Silence. Then, we made a mistake. We see that now. No, I said quietly. You're only seeing your own desperation. There's a difference. I hung up and opened my laptop, reviewing Phoenix's latest acquisitions. We'd expanded beyond Morton's portfolio, snapping up distressed debt across the city. Every deal made us stronger, more influential. The physical therapist had me practicing with a cane now. Each step was a victory, a reminder that I wasn't the helpless victim my family had abandoned. Your recovery is remarkable, Dr. Chin said during my checkup. Most patients take much longer to reach this stage. I didn't tell her that rage could be as powerful a motivator as physical therapy. The next day, David brought more news. My parents had tried to refinance their mortgage, approaching every bank in town. They were denied, he reported. Their credits shot from the Morton collapse. I nodded, unsurprised. And the house? They've listed it for sale. No takers yet. The Victorian had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandfather had bought it with his first real estate profits, turning it from a rundown property into a symbol of success. Now it would become a symbol of something else, the price of betrayal. My phone buzzed, with a text from Mom. We're having a family meeting tonight about the house. Please come. We need you. I stared at the message, remembering all the unanswered calls I'd made from my hospital bed. All the nights I'd laid awake, fighting pain and loneliness, while they lived their lives as if I didn't exist. Can't make it, I texted back. I have a meeting with my investment advisors. Let them wonder about that. Let them speculate about my finances while their own crumbled. Because soon they would learn just how expensive abandonment could be. That night, I sat in my apartment. I checked out of the hospital last week. Looking at old family photos, happy faces smiled back at me, preserving moments when I'd believed in unconditional love and family loyalty. You were right, Grandpa, I whispered to his image. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them. My laptop chimed with an email notification. David had sent the latest report on Phoenix Holdings. Our company had grown exponentially, attracting attention from major players in the finance world. But I wasn't interested in their attention. I was focused on one particular asset, a Victorian house that would soon teach my family the true meaning of consequences. 3 months after Phoenix Capital acquired my family's mortgage, I stood without assistance in my office on the 40th floor of downtown's most prestigious building, looking out at the city below. My cane rested against the desk, rarely needed now, except on particularly tiring days. My phone buzzed, a text from David. "They're here." I smoothed my designer suit, a small smile playing on my lips. "Send them up." Minutes later, my family walked into my office. Their shocked expressions as they took in the luxurious space, the stunning view, and my position behind the massive desk were almost worth every painful step of my recovery. "Catherine?" Mom's voice wavered. This is your office. Welcome to Phoenix Capital Management," I said calmly. "Please, sit down." They sank into the leather chairs facing my desk. Dad looked older than I remembered, his face lined with worry. Olivia had lost her polished shine, her designer clothes replaced by something more modest. Mom's hands trembled as she clutched her purse. "You work here?" Olivia asked, her eyes darting around the office. "As what?" "Not exactly." I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall behind me lit up with the Phoenix Capital logo. "I own it." The silence that followed was deafening. That's impossible," Dad finally managed. "Phoenix Capital is the company that bought our mortgage. They're worth hundreds of millions. The latest valuation puts us at just over $1 billion. I kept my voice professionally detached. "Would you like to see the paperwork?" Mom started crying. Not the elegant tears she shed at charity galas, but ugly, racking sobs. All this time, while we were drowning in debt. "You were successful?" I finished for her. "Yes. No thanks to any of you." "Why didn't you tell us?" Olivia demanded. "Why did you let us suffer?" I leaned forward, my hands flat on the desk. "Let you suffer? Like you let me suffer in that hospital, alone in pain, wondering why my family hadn't bothered to visit. We were dealing with our own crisis," Dad protested weakly. "No," I cut him off. "You were dealing with the consequences of your own choices. The risky investments, the lavish spending, the constant need to maintain appearances. And when I needed you most, you decided I wasn't worth the inconvenience." I pulled out a folder and laid 3 documents on the desk. Option 1. I foreclose on the house immediately. You have 30 days to vacate. Dad's face went pale. Option 2. You keep the house, but with the current terms. Double payments, no grace period, no exceptions. Mom's sobs grew louder. Option 3. I slid the final document forward. You sign the house over to me. I let you stay as tenants, with reasonable rent, but you acknowledge that you've lost any claim to our grandfather's legacy. "You're enjoying this," Olivia accused, her voice bitter. "You're punishing us." "No," I said quietly. "I'm teaching you what it feels like to be abandoned by family." I stood up, walking to the window without my cane. "You know what got me through those weeks in the hospital? Not the pain medication, not the physical therapy. It was understanding that I had to become someone who could never be hurt like that again." "Catherine, please," Mom whispered. "We're sorry. We were wrong." "Sorry because you mean it, or sorry because I hold your fate in my hands?" No one answered. I turned back to face them. "You have 24 hours to decide. Choose wisely." After they left, David came in. "You okay?" I nodded, watching their car pull away 40 stories below. "Have the papers ready for whatever they choose. And if they go public, try to challenge your ownership." Then I released the documents showing how they mismanaged Grandpa's trust, how they used Olivia's law school as an excuse to mortgage a fully paid house, how they chose luxury over family. The next day, exactly 23 hours later, they returned with the signed option 3 documents. No one spoke as I reviewed the paperwork, my signature joining theirs in crisp black ink. "The rental agreement will arrive tomorrow," I said, closing the folder. "I suggest you read it carefully." "Is this it?" Olivia asked, her voice small. "Are we just done as a family?" I met her eyes, seeing for the first time how much the past months had changed her. The entitlement was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like understanding. "Family," I said softly, "isn't about shared DNA or shared property. It's about being there when it matters most. You taught me that. And there's no going back." Mom's question carried all the weight of her regret. I thought about the lonely hospital nights, the unanswered calls, the casual cruelty of their abandonment. Then I thought about Grandpa's words about money revealing true character. Going back? No, but forward. That depends on you. They left quietly, the victory I'd imagined feeling more hollow than I'd expected. But as I watched the sun set over the city, I knew I'd done what was necessary, not for revenge, but for justice. Not to hurt them, but to teach them. Money hadn't changed me. It had revealed me. Revealed a strength I never knew I had. 1 year later, I stood in front of the Victorian, its restored grandeur a testament to the renovations I'd overseen. My family still lived there, paying their rent on time, learning slowly what it meant to live within their means. Olivia had quit her prestigious law firm to work at a nonprofit. Mom had started volunteering at the hospital where I'd recovered. Dad had finally retired, spending his days restoring classic cars instead of chasing status. They weren't perfect. Our relationship wasn't healed. But they were changing, and maybe that was enough. "Miss Porter?" My assistant's voice came through my phone. "Your 3 o'clock is waiting. The investors are very interested in Phoenix expansion plans." "On my way," I replied, taking one last look at the house. I didn't need the cane anymore. My legs had healed stronger than before, and so had I. As I drove away, I thought about how life's worst moments can become our greatest teachers. My family had abandoned me, but in doing so, they'd forced me to become unbreakable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about becoming someone who can never be broken again. And I had succeeded at both. I never wanted to be a doctor. That might sound ungrateful. After all, medicine is a noble profession, one that many dream of pursuing. But for me, it was a gilded cage, a path chosen by my parents that slowly suffocated my true passion. My name is Sophia Chin, and I've been living a double life for the past 6 years. To my parents, I'm Dr. Chin, the dutiful daughter who followed the path they paved. To the art world, I'm Aurora Knight, one of the most sought-after contemporary artists in New York, known for paintings that sell for millions. And neither world knows about the other. The irony of my situation hit me hardest this morning as I stood in the newly renovated wing of Metropolitan General Hospital, my parents' pride and joy. They've both been prominent surgeons here for 30 years. The hospital was unveiling its new Healing Through Art initiative. And there, taking center stage in the main lobby, was my latest piece. A massive canvas exploding with colors, abstract yet somehow alive, purchased anonymously through my gallery for $2 million. My mother stood beside me, critiquing it with her surgical precision. "I don't understand modern art," she said. wriggling her nose. $2 million for splashes of paint. The hospital board must be losing their minds. If only she knew those splashes of paint would pay for an entire year of the hospital's pediatric care program. My father joined us, his white coat pristine, as always. At least it adds some color to the place, he muttered. Though I would have preferred they spend the money on new equipment. I bit my tongue, remembering the night I created that painting. I had just finished a 36-hour shift at the hospital, their hospital, and instead of sleeping, I'd gone straight to my secret studio. The emotions poured out of me onto the canvas. The exhaustion, the frustration, the constant pressure to be someone I wasn't. But my story really begins 10 years ago, when I was 18 and dared to dream of attending art school. Absolutely not. My father's voice had thundered through our house, making the fine china in the display cabinet tremble. No daughter of mine will waste her life painting pictures. I stood in our living room, acceptance letter from the prestigious Art Institute clutched in my shaking hands. The same hands that had secretly won 3 national youth art competitions under a pseudonym. The same hands my parents wanted to train for holding scalpels instead of paintbrushes. But Dad, I got a full scholarship. They say I'm one of the most promising young artists they've seen in years. My voice sounded small, even to me. My mother sat perfectly straight on our leather sofa, her expression a carefully constructed mask of disappointment. Sophia, we've invested everything in preparing you for medical school. The extra classes, the summer programs, the MCAT prep courses. This isn't up for discussion. I never asked for those things. I protested, feeling the familiar pressure building behind my eyes. I never wanted. Enough. My father cut me off. You think art will give you a stable future? You think you can support yourself drawing pictures? Look at your cousin William. He tried to be a creative. Now he's 35 and still living in his parents' basement. But I'm good at it, I whispered. Really good. My mother stood up, straightening her already impeccable blouse. You're good at science too. Top of your class in biology. Perfect MCAT scores. That's not an accident, Sophia. That's your true calling. I wanted to tell them about the paintings I'd sold online, about the gallery owner who'd seen my work and offered to represent me, about the fire that burned inside me every time I picked up a brush. But I knew it wouldn't matter. In their world, success had only one definition, and it wore a white coat. The acceptance letter crumpled in my fist. I had a choice to make: defy my parents and potentially lose my family, or find another way. That night, I made a decision that would shape the next decade of my life. I wrote to the Art Institute declining their offer, and I accepted my place at my parents' alma mater, Preston Medical School. But I also sent an email to that gallery owner, under my new pseudonym, Aurora Knight. I'll need to work in absolute secrecy, I wrote. No public appearances, no photos, no interviews, but I'll keep painting. His response came within hours. Intriguing. Mystery can be a powerful marketing tool. Send me your next piece, and we'll begin. And so began my double life. By day, I threw myself into medical school, learning about human anatomy with the same precision I used to study color theory. By night, in a small studio apartment I rented under my alias, I created art that began to catch the attention of collectors worldwide. The first year was the hardest. Medical school was as demanding as my parents had promised, and there were nights I thought I would break under the pressure. But somehow, the exhaustion and stress only fueled my art. My paintings became more intense, more emotional. Critics called them raw. visceral, almost surgical in their precision. If they only knew. My first major sale came during my second year of medical school. A triptych that sold for $180,000. I celebrated alone in my studio, dancing silently among my canvases, knowing I couldn't tell a soul. My parents called that same night, proud that I'd aced another pathology exam. I let them talk, wondering what they'd say if they knew their dedicated medical student daughter had just been hailed as the most exciting new voice in contemporary art. The next few years followed the same pattern. I excelled in my medical studies, earning the praise and approval my parents had always craved. But in the art world, Aurora Night became a sensation. My paintings sold for increasingly higher prices, and the mystery surrounding my identity only added to their allure. Collectors loved the story. The anonymous artist whose work seemed to capture the very essence of human emotion. "Your technique is remarkable," a prominent critic wrote. "There's something almost clinical in your understanding of human nature, yet your expression of it is pure poetry." I had to laugh at that. If he only knew how many hours I spent studying actual human anatomy. By the time I graduated medical school, I had earned enough from my art to buy a small private island. Not that I could ever tell my parents that. Instead, I dutifully accepted a residency position at their hospital, Metropolitan General, while maintaining my secret studio across town. The balancing act was exhausting, but something unexpected happened. I discovered that being a doctor made me a better artist, and being an artist made me a better doctor. My understanding of human anatomy brought a unique perspective to my paintings, while my artistic sensitivity helped me connect with patients in ways my colleagues couldn't quite match. But every time my parents bragged about their doctor daughter, every time they reminded me how right they had been to push me into medicine, I thought about the paintings selling for millions under a name they'd never know. Until this morning, when they stood in their own hospital, unknowingly criticizing their daughter's artwork worth millions. The same artwork that would fund the pediatric care program they'd been fighting to expand for years. And that's when I realized, maybe it was finally time for Aurora Night to step into the light. But I'd never expected what would happen next. The decision to reveal my identity wasn't made in a moment. It built slowly, like layers of paint on canvas, each small incident adding another stroke to the bigger picture. My father's criticism of the painting in the hospital lobby that morning was just the final layer. What he didn't know was that I had another piece being unveiled that same evening at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Standing in the hospital's sterile hallway, still in my white coat, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Marcus, my gallery owner. A text message flashed across the screen. "Major problem with tonight's unveiling. Need to speak ASAP." I ducked into an empty consultation room, my heart racing. "Marcus, what's wrong?" His voice crackled through the speaker, tense with worry. "The Times is running a piece on Aurora Night. Someone talked. They're claiming they know your real identity." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. Only you know." "It wasn't me," he cut in. "But someone at the hospital connected the dots. They've noticed you're never on shift during Aurora Night's major shows. They've linked the anatomical precision in your work to medical training. They're running the story tonight, right before the Met unveiling." I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly weak. 6 years of careful secrecy, about to unravel because I'd been careless with my shift scheduling. "Can we stop it?" I whispered. "Not unless you want to confirm or deny on record. They're giving us 1 hour to comment." Through the consultation room window, I could see my parents in the distance, doing their rounds together as they had for 30 years. They looked so confident, so certain of their world and their place in it. "I'll call you back," I told Marcus. I had spent years maintaining this divide: the dedicated doctor-daughter and the mysterious millionaire artist. But trying to keep these worlds separate had become like trying to keep oil and water from mixing by sheer force of will. Exhausting. Impossible. My pager buzzed. Emergency in the pediatric ward. As I rushed down the corridor, my mind raced through the implications. If the story broke, everyone would know. My colleagues, my patients, my parents. The emergency turned out to be an allergic reaction, scary but treatable. As I calmed the frightened child with an epinephrine shot, I noticed the walls of the pediatric ward. They were stark white, institutional. Nothing like the vibrant painting now hanging in the lobby. "Doctor," the child's mother touched my arm. "Thank you. He was so scared, but you made him feel safe." I looked at the little boy, now breathing normally, clutching his stuffed elephant. In that moment, I realized something. I was good at this, not because my parents had forced me into medicine, but because I brought my whole self to it, including the artist they tried to suppress. I stepped out of the room and called Marcus back. "Don't fight the story," I said firmly. "In fact, I'll give them something better. Tell them Aurora Knight will be attending tonight's unveiling in person, for the first time ever." Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you sure? This changes everything. Everything's already changing. Might as well do it on my terms." I hung up and did something I'd never done before. I requested an emergency evening off. My supervisor was surprised. I was known for never asking for schedule changes, but agreed given my outstanding record. Then I called my parents' office. "Mom, Dad, I need you to come to the Metropolitan Museum of Art tonight. There's something you need to see." "The museum?" My mother sounded confused. "Sophia, we have dinner plans with the hospital board." "Please," I cut in. "This is important. More important than dinner plans." Maybe it was something in my voice, but after a pause, my father said, "What time?" At home, I opened the secret closet where I kept my Aurora Knight persona. Unlike my practical doctor's wardrobe, these clothes were all artistic expression, carefully curated pieces that made statements without saying a word. I chose a hand-painted silk dress, one of my own creations, each brush stroke telling part of my story. As I dressed, I thought about the painting being unveiled tonight. It was different from my others, more personal, more revealing. I had titled it Daughter of Medicine, and into it I had poured all the complexity of my double life. The central figure was a woman in a white coat, but her shadow on the wall was an artist at an easel. Medical instruments morphed into paintbrushes, hospital corridors bloomed with color, and throughout it all ran the steady rhythm of a heartbeat monitor, rendered in gold leaf. I had created it during a week of night shifts in the ICU, each layer added during stolen moments between rounds, the paint sometimes mixing with my tears of exhaustion. It was both confession and declaration, and tonight it would sell for $3.5 million, if the sale still went through after my revelation. My phone buzzed again. "Marcus." The Times agreed to hold the story until after the unveiling, but social media is already buzzing with speculation. "You're trending." I looked at myself in the mirror. The elegant artist's dress, my hospital ID, still clipped to my bag out of habit. For the first time in years, I felt whole, undivided. "Good," I said. "Let them talk." The museum was already crowded when I arrived. The unveiling was the social event of the season, made even more exciting by rumors that the mysterious Aurora Knight might actually appear. I spotted my parents near the entrance, looking uncomfortable and out of place in their business attire. They hadn't seen me yet. Behind them, under a velvet drape, waited my painting, my truth. In less than an hour, everything would change. Marcus appeared at my elbow, looking nervous. The press is here in force. Last chance to back out. I shook my head. Not this time. The museum director approached the podium, tapping the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this historic evening. I began moving through the crowd toward my parents, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Years of hospital emergencies had taught me how to stay calm in a crisis. The director was still speaking, and we are honored to announce that tonight, after 6 years of mystery, the artist known as Aurora Knight. I reached my parents just as the velvet drape began to fall. Mom, Dad, I said softly, there's something I need to tell you. They turned, their eyes widening as they took in my appearance. So different from their proper doctor-daughter. Behind them, the painting was now fully revealed, and gasps rippled through the crowd. I'm Aurora Knight. The words hung in the air between us as camera flashes exploded around us. My mother's face went pale, my father's jaw clenched, and in their eyes, I saw something I had never seen before, complete and utter shock. But before they could respond, before they could process this revelation, something happened that none of us expected. Something that would turn this already momentous evening into a night that would change not just my life, but the entire art world forever. The silence lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Then chaos erupted. Camera flashes exploded around us like strobe lights. Reporters shouted questions. The crowd surged forward, everyone trying to get closer to the newly revealed Aurora Knight. But I couldn't look away from my parents' faces. My mother's perfectly maintained composure cracked first. This is impossible, she whispered. You're a doctor. I'm both, I said quietly, even as the crowd pressed closer. I've always been both. Then something unexpected happened. Dr. James Morrison, head of the hospital board, pushed through the crowd. His face was flushed with excitement. The painting in the hospital lobby, he blurted out. The one we just unveiled this morning. That was you. I nodded. His next words changed everything. We have to pull out of the purchase. We can't possibly accept a $2 million donation from one of our own residents. The reporters went wild. Headlines were already forming. Doctor artist secretly donates millions to own hospital. But my father's voice cut through the chaos. Donation? He turned to Dr. Morrison. What donation? Dr. Morrison looked confused. The purchase price of the lobby painting. It was returned to the hospital as an anonymous donation, earmarked for the pediatric care program. We thought some wealthy benefactor. His voice trailed off as understanding dawned. My father turned back to me, his face unreadable. How many other paintings? How much? 38 major pieces. Marcus stepped in, ever the efficient gallery owner. Total sales approaching $40 million. Aurora Knight is the most successful artist under 40 in the contemporary art world. My mother swayed slightly. Nearby, a senior art critic was practically dancing with glee. The precision in her work, it all makes sense now. She brings a surgeon's eye to her art. Actually, I corrected him gently, I bring an artist's heart to my medicine. That's when the second surprise of the evening arrived. Dr. Sarah Chen, my chief resident, pushed forward. Her eyes were shining with unshed tears. "The Williams case," she said. "That impossible diagnosis you made last month. You said you noticed a pattern." I knew exactly what she meant. A young patient had presented with seemingly unrelated symptoms. While other doctors focused on test results, I had noticed something in the distribution of his symptoms that reminded me of a color theory principle: complementary patterns that revealed a hidden hole. "You see things differently," Dr. Chen continued. "That's why your diagnostic rate is so high. You're not just looking at symptoms. You're seeing patterns like an artist," my mother finished softly. For the first time since my revelation, I saw something shift in her expression. The shock was still there, but something else too, a glimmer of understanding. My father remained silent, his surgeon's hands clasped tightly behind his back. I knew that pose. He was trying to maintain control, to process everything with clinical detachment. The museum director was desperately trying to restore order, to proceed with the official unveiling of Daughter of Medicine. But I barely heard him. My focus was entirely on my father as he slowly walked toward my painting. He stood before it, this man who had never wanted his daughter to be an artist, studying every detail with the same intensity he brought to examining X-rays. I held my breath. "The anatomy," he said finally, his voice rough. "Every muscle, every proportion, it's perfect." "Yes," I said, moving to stand beside him. "Because I learned it from you." He turned to me, and I saw tears in his eyes, something I'd never seen before. "All these years," he whispered, "we thought we were teaching you to be a doctor, but you were learning to be something more." My mother joined us, her hand finding mine. "The painting in the hospital," she said. "You didn't just donate the money. You chose that spot in the lobby because it's where you both stop every morning," I finished. "I wanted to bring some beauty to your daily routine, even if you didn't know it was from me." The cameras were still flashing, reporters still shouting questions, but in that moment, it was just us, a family seeing each other clearly for the first time. Marcus approached cautiously. "Sophia, the buyers are waiting. The bidding for Daughter of Medicine has already exceeded the asking price. They want to know if you'll still sell. Now that—" "No," my father interrupted, surprising us all. He turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying with the authority of 30 years in surgery. "This painting belongs in the hospital, next to the other one, where everyone can see what happens when you don't force someone to choose between two halves of themselves." "Dad," I started to protest, "it's worth millions." He smiled, and it was a smile I'd never seen before. Part pride, part regret, part wonder. "So is my daughter." The story exploded overnight, of course. Doctor by day, millionaire artist by night, became a global sensation. The art world was fascinated by how medical training influenced my work. The medical community was intrigued by how artistic perception could enhance diagnostic skills. The hospital created a new program, integrating art therapy into patient care, with me as the director. My paintings now hang in both galleries and hospitals, bridging the worlds I once thought had to remain separate. My parents? They're still adjusting. Sometimes I catch them looking at me like they're seeing a stranger. But more often, they're looking at my work, both medical and artistic, with new eyes. Last week, I found my father in front of the lobby painting, studying it during his morning rounds. "I was wrong," he said without turning around. "When I told you that art wasn't a real career, I was trying to protect you from struggle, But instead, I almost prevented you from becoming who you were meant to be. I stood beside him, both of us in our white coats, looking at the swirls of color that had helped heal not just the hospital's finances, but our family's wounds. You didn't prevent anything, I told him. You taught me precision, dedication, and the importance of understanding human nature. I just applied those lessons to a larger canvas than you expected. He laughed, a real laugh, free from the weight of expectations. Your mother's talking about taking art classes, you know. Says she wants to understand your world better. It was always the same world, I said softly. I just needed everyone else to see it. Now, when people ask me if I'm a doctor or an artist, I smile and tell them the truth. I'm someone who refuses to be defined by other people's limitations. My art heals in one way, my medicine in another, but both come from the same place. A desire to make the world a little more beautiful, a little more whole. And my parents, they finally understand that success doesn't always wear a white coat. Sometimes it comes covered in paint. The plaque beneath the painting in the hospital lobby now bears both my names, Dr. Sophia Chen and Aurora Knight, a reminder that we are all, perhaps, more than the labels others give us. We just need the courage to show our true colors. And somewhere, in my studio that's no longer secret, a new canvas waits. Because this isn't the end of my story. It's just the first time I'm signing it with my real name. The email from CEO Marcus Bradford sat in my inbox like a ticking bomb. Sarah, we need to discuss your sister's position at the company. My office, 9 a.m. tomorrow. I stared at those words until they blurred, my coffee growing cold, beside my keyboard. Emma and I had always been inseparable, identical twins who finished each other's sentences, shared every secret, and even ended up at the same company. Now, as Chief Risk Officer at Bradford Financial, I was being asked to evaluate my own sister's performance. The morning traffic crawled through Manhattan's streets as my mind raced through possibilities. Emma had risen quickly through the trading division, making a name for herself, with consistently high returns. Sure, there had been whispers about her aggressive strategies, but nothing concrete. Nothing that should have caught the CEO's attention. Marcus's corner office commanded a view of Central Park, the autumn leaves creating a canvas of red and gold below. He gestured for me to sit, his expression grave. Sarah, I'll be direct. The board has concerns about Emma's trading activities. The numbers don't add up. We need you to conduct a thorough audit and prepare termination papers if necessary. My throat tightened. Sir, given our relationship, wouldn't another officer be more appropriate? He shook his head. You're the most qualified person in risk management. More importantly, you're known for your integrity. The board trusts you to be objective, family or not. I left his office feeling like I was drowning. In the elevator, I caught my reflection, the same dark hair and green eyes as Emma. But today the similarities felt like a curse. How could I investigate my own twin? Back at my desk, I began pulling Emma's trading records. Everything looked perfect on the surface. Consistent profits, well-documented strategies, detailed reports. Too perfect, perhaps. I dug deeper, cross-referencing timestamps, comparing market data, looking for patterns that others might have missed. That's when I found the first discrepancy. A series of trades executed milliseconds apart, each one small enough to fly under regulatory radar, but together they painted a troubling picture. I expanded my search, going back months, then years. My hands trembled as I compiled the data. This wasn't just aggressive trading, this was systematic fraud. Complex algorithms disguised as normal market activities. Phantom trades that existed only on paper. And somewhere in all of this, $12 million that couldn't be accounted for. Working late? Emma's voice made me jump. She stood in my office doorway, elegant in her designer suit, wearing the confident smile that had helped her charm clients and colleagues alike. Just catching up on some reports, I said, carefully closing the files on my screen. You? Closed another big deal today. She perched on the edge of my desk, just as she used to sit on my bed during our late-night talks growing up. The clients are ecstatic. Marcus will have to consider me for the director position now. I studied her face, my face, essentially, looking for any sign of guilt or worry. There was none, just the same self-assured expression she'd worn since we were kids, when she convinced me to switch places for exams or cover for her sneaking out. That's great, I managed. Hey, want to grab dinner this weekend? We haven't really talked lately. Can't. Flying to Aspen with James. She checked her watch. A Patek Philippe that probably cost more than my annual salary. Speaking of which, I should head out. Don't work too hard, sis. After she left, I sat in the darkening office, my mind spinning. The sister I thought I knew everything about was now a stranger. The same person who'd held my hand through our parents' divorce, who'd been my constant ally in a world that often struggled to tell us apart, had been orchestrating a massive financial fraud right under my nose. I pulled up the company's ethics policy on my screen, the words blurring as tears threatened to fall. As chief risk officer, my duty was clear, but as a sister, the weight of my discovery pressed down like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe. My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. Hey, almost forgot. Can you sign off on those key 3 risk assessments? Need them for a client meeting tomorrow. Love you. The casual request felt like a mockery now. How many other times had I signed documents without questioning her? Had my trust in her made me complicit? I opened my personal laptop and began documenting everything I'd found, creating copies and securing them outside the company's servers. If I was going to do this, I needed to be thorough. No one could accuse me of acting out of jealousy or spite. The night deepened outside my window, lights twinkling across the city like stars. In 48 hours, there would be a board meeting where Emma would present her latest trading strategies. She didn't know that I'd also be presenting, showing exactly how those strategies had been used to perpetrate a massive fraud. My twin sister, my other half, had built her success on lies, and now I had to decide: family loyalty or professional integrity, blood ties or legal obligations. As I gathered my things to leave, a photo on my desk caught my eye. Emma and me at our college graduation, arms around each other, identical smiles beaming at the camera. I turned it face down, unable to bear those smiling faces, and walked out into the night. The next morning, I arrived early, determined to gather final proof before the board meeting. The office was quiet, just cleaning staff, and a few early risers. I logged into the system, ready to compile my findings into a presentation. But something was wrong. Files were missing. Trading records I'd flagged were altered. The evidence of fraud was being systematically erased. My heart raced as I checked access logs. Multiple logins from my credentials, times when I knew I hadn't been at my computer. Then I remembered. Emma and I had shared everything growing up, including passwords, a habit we'd never quite broken. She knew. Somehow, she knew I was investigating her. As if summoned by my thoughts, a message popped up on my screen. Storage room. Now, We need to talk. I stood on shaky legs, straightening my jacket like armor. The storage room had been our secret meeting spot since we both started at the company, a place for sisterly gossip and support during tough days. Now it felt like walking into a trap. Emma was already there, her expression unreadable in the dim light. For a moment, we just stared at each other, mirror images caught in an impossible situation. "Why?" I finally asked. "Why did you do it?" She smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile I'd grown up with. This was something colder, more calculated. "Oh, Sarah, always so righteous, so by the book. Did you really think you were the only one who could figure it out?" "I have to report this," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "You know that." "Do I?" She stepped closer. "Think carefully, sister dear. Your credentials are all over these transactions. Who's going to believe you didn't help me? That you didn't know all along?" The implication hit me like a physical blow. She'd used my trust, my access, my signature to cover her tracks. If this came out, we'd both go down. She must have seen the realization on my face because her expression softened. "It doesn't have to be this way. Help me clean this up, and we both win. The board meeting is tomorrow. One signature from you clearing my trades, and this all goes away." I backed away from her. My twin, my sister, this stranger wearing my face. "You really think I'd help you cover this up?" "Family first," she said, using the words our mother had drilled into us since childhood. "We're twins, Sarah. Two halves of the same whole. You really want to destroy that?" I turned and walked out, her words following me like shadows. Back at my desk, I stared at my blank screen, mind racing. The evidence was gone, erased or altered beyond recovery. Without proof, it would be my word against hers. And she was right. My credentials were tangled up in everything. Any investigation would implicate me too. But as I sat there, a memory surfaced. Something Grandma had told us when we were little, after catching Emma blaming me for a broken vase. The truth always finds a way out, dear ones. Always. I opened my email and began to type. "Mr. Bradford, regarding tomorrow's board meeting." The first rays of dawn were breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of promise and warning. In a few hours, I would walk into that boardroom and change everything. But first, I had work to do. The morning of the board meeting, I arrived at Bradford Financial 2 hours early. The sky was still dark, the office floors eerily quiet, except for the hum of computers and the occasional cleaning staff member. I had work to do before everyone arrived. Last night, after Emma's threat in the storage room, I'd remembered something crucial. In my first month as Chief Risk Officer, I'd implemented a shadow backup system, a secure, encrypted server that automatically mirrored all trading data. It was a precaution I'd insisted on after a major bank lost millions in a data crash. Emma didn't know about it. Nobody did, except the IT director who'd helped set it up. My hands trembled slightly as I entered the complex series of passwords. If Emma had somehow found this too. But no, the files were there. Every transaction, every altered record, every fraudulent trade, all preserved in their original form. Working early? I jumped at the voice. Marcus Bradford stood in my office doorway, looking impeccable in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. "Sir, I need to show you something before the meeting." For the next hour, I walked him through what I'd found. The complex web of fraudulent trades, the manipulated timestamps, the shell companies Emma had created to hide the money trail. His face grew increasingly grave as he studied the evidence. 12 million, he finally said, running a hand through his silver hair. Right under our noses. And you're certain about this? I handed him a USB drive. Everything's here, including proof that my login credentials were used without my knowledge. He pocketed the drive, his expression unreadable. The board meets in an hour. Be ready. By 9, the tension in the boardroom was palpable. 14 people sat around the massive mahogany table, all focused on their tablets where the meeting agenda glowed. Emma sat near the head of the table, looking confident in a navy Armani suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. When she caught my eye, she gave me a small smile. My stomach churned. Did she really think I would back down? That I would help her cover this up? Marcus called the meeting to order. Before we begin, there's been a development regarding the trading division's performance reports. Emma's smile widened as she reached for her presentation materials. Yes, I have the quarterly numbers right here. Not those reports. Marcus cut in. His voice was steel. Sarah, please proceed. I stood, my legs steadier than I expected. With a click of my remote, the room's screens lit up with transaction records, bank transfers, and damning evidence that I'd reconstructed from the backup server. Over the past 18 months, I began, my voice clear in the hushed room. A sophisticated fraud scheme has been operating within our trading division. Using manipulated algorithms and phantom trades, approximately $12 million has been diverted through a network of shell companies. Emma's face went from confident to confused to pale as I continued my presentation. I showed the board everything. The fake trades, the altered timestamps, the money trail that led to offshore accounts. This is ridiculous, Emma interrupted, standing up so abruptly her chair rolled backward. These are legitimate trades. Sarah's just jealous because I've outperformed every metric. Sit down, Miss Sullivan, Marcus ordered. Your credentials were used to access and alter company records at 3 a.m. this morning. Care to explain that? Emma's eyes darted to me, a flash of betrayal crossing her face. I was home asleep. Someone must have hacked. We have security footage, I said quietly, and the original records from a secure backup server you didn't know about. The color drained from her face. She sank back into her chair, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the armrests. Given the severity of these allegations, Marcus continued, I've already contacted the SEC and our external auditors. Ms. Sullivan, please surrender your company ID and devices. Security will escort you out. You can't do this. Emma's voice shook. Sarah, tell them. Tell them you helped me. Your credentials are all over these trades. I met her desperate gaze. No, Emma, I didn't help you. You stole my passwords, used my trust, and tried to frame me when you got caught. 2 security guards appeared at the boardroom doors. Emma's face contorted with rage as she stood. Family first, remember? We're supposed to protect each other. I am protecting you, I said softly. From continuing down this path, from becoming someone who thinks it's okay to steal and lie and betray the people closest to them. She laughed, a harsh sound that didn't match her elegant appearance. You self-righteous bitch. You really think you're better than me? That you're doing the right thing? Watch your back, sister dear. This isn't over. As security led her out, I remained standing, my presentation still glowing on the screens around us. The board members whispered among themselves, shooting glances between me and the door where my twin had just exited. Marcus cleared his throat. Given the circumstances, we'll need to do a complete audit of all trading activities. Sarah, I want you to lead the investigation team. And, thank you. I know how difficult this must have been. I nodded, unable to speak. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of action items and next steps. When it finally ended, I walked to my office on shaky legs and closed the door. On my desk, the face-down photo from our graduation caught my eye. I picked it up, studying our identical smiles, remembering how simple everything had seemed back then. When had Emma changed, or had she always been this way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You chose your job over your own twin. Hope you can live with yourself. I blocked the number, but Emma's words echoed in my mind. Had I done the right thing? The moral thing, yes. The legal thing, absolutely. But family was supposed to be different. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Lisa from HR, looking apologetic. Sarah? We need you to sign some paperwork regarding the investigation. I followed her to a conference room where several thick folders awaited my signature. Each page felt heavier than the last. Documentation of my sister's crimes, written in cold, official language. As I signed the final page, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Check your email, sis. Remember that joint account we opened in college? Guess whose name is on all the transfers? My blood ran cold. I'd forgotten about that account. We'd opened it together for spring break savings, sharing the login like we shared everything else. Had she used it for the stolen money? Racing back to my office, I pulled up my email. There it was. Bank statements showing transfers from our joint account to known shell companies. My name, clear as day, on every transaction. Emma's final trap. Even as she was being caught, she'd made sure I couldn't escape unscathed. I stared at my computer screen, watching as my carefully constructed world began to crumble. The investigation I'd started was about to become much more complicated. And somewhere out there, my twin sister was smiling. 3 days after Emma's dramatic exit from Bradford Financial, I sat in my apartment surrounded by bank statements, old emails, and a growing sense of dread. The joint account she'd mentioned wasn't just a spring break savings account anymore. It had become a complex web of transactions that seemed designed to implicate me in her fraud. My phone rang. Marcus Bradford's number. My hand shook slightly as I answered. Sarah, the FBI's forensic team found something interesting. His voice was carefully neutral. Care to explain why your name is on transfers totaling over $2 million? I closed my eyes, feeling the walls closing in. Sir, that account, it's complicated. Emma and I opened it in college. I haven't used it in years, but we never closed it. Come to the office. Now, bring any documentation you have. The drive to Bradford Financial felt like heading to my own execution. The morning sun glinted off the building's glass facade, a stark contrast to the darkness I felt inside. In the lobby, 2 FBI agents waited with Marcus. Ms. Sullivan. The female agent stepped forward. I'm Agent Carter. We need to discuss some financial records. The next 4 hours were grueling. Every transaction, every password change, every login was scrutinized. I explained the history of the joint account, provided old emails showing I hadn't accessed it in years, handed over my personal bank statements proving I hadn't received any stolen funds. There's something else, Agent Carter said, sliding a document across the table. We found this in your sister's apartment. It was a letter, dated 3 years ago, in what appeared to be my handwriting. In it, I detailed plans to manipulate trading algorithms and divert funds. A perfect piece of evidence implicating me as the mastermind. "That's not my signature," I said, studying the letter. "Emma and I used to forge each other's handwriting as kids. We made it into a game, seeing who could do it better." "A game that's now being used against you," Marcus observed grimly. Agent Carter leaned forward. "Miss Sullivan, we need you to help us understand your sister's methods. How she thinks, how she plans. You're our best chance at tracking down the missing millions." I looked at the fake letter again, remembering all the times Emma and I had cockered for each other growing up. But this wasn't about switching places for a math test anymore. This was serious fraud, and she tried to drag me down with her. "Okay," I said. "I'll help. But first, there's something you need to see." I pulled out my laptop and opened an encrypted folder labeled Twin Tricks, a detailed record of every time Emma had impersonated me over the years. Every forged signature, every switched identity, every borrowed password. I'd started keeping track in college, not out of suspicion, but because I was amazed at how often we got away with it. "This is thorough," Agent Carter muttered, scrolling through the files. "Emma thinks she knows all my secrets," I said, but she forgot that I know all of hers too. Over the next week, I worked with the FBI team, helping them understand Emma's patterns, her favorite hiding spots for money, her methods for covering her tracks, the ways she manipulated people and systems. Then came the breakthrough. "The money's in Singapore," I told Agent Carter, pointing to a series of transactions. "Every summer growing up, we played Monopoly with our grandfather. Emma always hid her money under the Singapore property card. She thought it was lucky." Within hours, the FBI had frozen accounts at 3 Singapore banks. $9 million of the stolen $12 million was recovered. Emma had been tracked to a luxury hotel in Bangkok, preparing to disappear with the remaining funds. The arrest made international news. "Twin sisters in Wall Street fraud drama," the headlines screamed. Photos of us side by side, in court, at work, at our graduation, splashed across financial websites and newspapers. I watched the coverage from my office, where I'd been cleared of any wrongdoing. The documentation I'd kept, combined with the evidence from the shadow backup server, had protected me from Emma's attempts to share the blame. Then came the text I'd been dreading. "Mom wants to see you. Hospital. Room 318. Our mother had been admitted with chest pains after Emma's arrest. I hadn't visited, couldn't face her disappointment. But now, the hospital corridor seemed endless. In room 318, Mom lay pale against white sheets, looking older than her 60 years. "Sarah." Her voice was weak. "Why didn't you protect her?" I sat in the hard plastic chair beside her bed. "Mom, Emma stole $12 million. She tried to frame me for it. How was I supposed to protect her from that? You're twins. You're supposed to look out for each other." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Now one of my daughters is going to prison." "And the other daughter?" I asked quietly. "The one who did the right thing. What about her?" Mom turned her face away. "Just go." I stood, my own tears threatening to fall. At the door, I paused. "You know what, Mom? Emma chose this path. She chose to steal, to lie, to betray everyone who trusted her, including me, especially me. I didn't put her in prison. She did that to herself." 2 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse, watching as Emma was sentenced to 15 years for fraud and money laundering. She pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. When they led her away, she turned to look at me. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the sister I'd grown up with, the other half of my whole. Then her expression hardened, and she was gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Sarah, how does it feel to send your twin sister to prison? Do you regret turning her in? Will you ever forgive her? I pushed through them to where Marcus waited by a company car. Ready to go back to work? He asked. I nodded. The board had named me head of global risk management, with a mandate to strengthen our fraud prevention systems. My first project? Implementing the shadow backup server across all divisions. That evening, I returned to my apartment and finally unpacked the box of family photos I'd hidden away after Emma's arrest. Each image told a story. Birthdays, holidays, graduations. 2 identical girls growing into 2 very different women. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. My heart stopped until I read it. Ms. Sullivan, this is Agent Carter. Final recovery complete. All stolen funds returned to Bradford Financial. Thought you'd want to know. I picked up the graduation photo I'd kept face down for so long. 2 smiling faces, 2 identical futures full of promise. Emma had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. Opening my laptop, I began typing my weekly risk management report. Tomorrow, I would walk into Bradford Financial not as Emma's twin, not as the woman who uncovered a massive fraud, but simply as Sarah Sullivan, head of global risk management. And that was enough. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Some relationships, like some investments, weren't worth the risk anymore. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one a reminder that sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. I had lost my twin, my mirror image, my other half. But I had kept something more valuable, my integrity. And in the end, that was the only reflection that mattered. The day my family disowned me, it was raining. I remember that detail clearly. The way the water streamed down the windows of Harrison Industries' executive conference room, while inside, my father's face turned an alarming shade of red. Incompetent, he shouted, slamming a stack of papers onto the polished table. Do you have any idea what your mistake could have cost us? I stood there, 22 years old and fresh out of business school, trying not to cry. Dad, I can fix it. The contract isn't final yet. Fix it? My older brother Michael's laugh was cruel. You nearly sold our shipping division for half its value. There is no fixing that kind of stupidity. The mistake they were talking about was a draft contract I'd prepared for the sale of Harrison Maritime, one of our smaller divisions. I'd accidentally used outdated valuation figures, ones that didn't include our recent fleet expansion. The error was caught before any real damage was done, but to hear my family tell it, I'd nearly destroyed a century of Harrison family business. I trusted you with this, my father continued, his voice dropping to something even worse than yelling. Disappointment. I gave you a chance to prove yourself, and this is how you repay that trust. I tried to explain that I'd been working 80-hour weeks, that I'd been trying to handle both the maritime deal and the new tech acquisition they dumped on my desk. But excuses didn't matter in the Harrison family. Results were all they cared about. Jack, my mother's voice from the doorway made us all turn. She stood there in her perfect channel suit, looking more like a CEO than the socialite she pretended to be. The board is waiting. My father straightened his tie. We'll finish this discussion later. But we didn't. That evening, I was called to my father's study, the room where 3 generations of Harrison men had made the decisions that built our family empire. The leather-bound books and old oil paintings seemed to watch disapprovingly as my father delivered his verdict. "You're done here," he said without preamble. "The board has lost confidence in your judgment. Your position at Harrison Industries is terminated, effective immediately." I felt like I'd been punched. "Dad, please. It was one mistake. A mistake we can't afford." He wouldn't even look at me. "You'll receive 6 months severance. After that, you're on your own." "You're firing me? I'm your daughter." Which is exactly why this hurts so much. He finally met my eyes. "You're not just an employee, Emma. You're a Harrison. We trusted you to live up to that name, and you failed." My mother's voice came from behind me. I hadn't even heard her enter. "We've arranged a position for you at your uncle's firm in Seattle, far enough away that this incident won't reflect badly on the family." I turned to face her, shocked. "You want me to leave New York?" "Want has nothing to do with it." Her perfectly painted lips barely moved. "The decision has been made. Your flight leaves tomorrow morning. And if I refuse—" My father's voice hardened. "Then you're on your own completely. No severance, no connections, no family support. Your choice." I looked between them, the parents who had pushed me toward business school, who had drilled the importance of the Harrison legacy into me since childhood. Now they were casting me aside over one mistake. "Some choice," I whispered. Only one person in the family stood up for me that night. My grandfather, Thomas Harrison Teal, the man who had turned our regional shipping company into a global corporate empire. He stormed into my father's study just as I was leaving, his weathered face dark with anger. "Jack, you fool," he growled at my father. "You have no idea what you're throwing away." But my father stood firm. "Dad, the board has already—" "The board?" Grandpa's laugh was bitter. "You mean those yes-men you surrounded yourself with? The ones who forgot what built this company in the first place." I had never seen my grandfather so angry. He turned to me, his expression softening. "Emma, dear, come stay with me. We'll sort this out." But I was already shaking my head. The humiliation was too fresh, the pain too raw. "No, Grandpa, they've made their choice." I left that night, ignoring my mother's carefully planned Seattle arrangement. The 6 months severance would be enough to start over somewhere, anywhere that wasn't under my family's shadow. What I didn't know then was that my grandfather had already set something in motion, something that wouldn't be revealed until 10 years later, when his will would turn the Harrison family upside down. That night, I checked into a hotel using my personal credit card, soon to be my only credit card, once my corporate accounts were frozen. I sat on the generic floral bedspread and opened my laptop, staring at the draft contract that had supposedly destroyed my future. Except, something wasn't right. I had worked on dozens of contracts during my brief time at Harrison Industries. I knew my own writing style, my own formatting preferences. This contract was different. Small things, spacing, font choices, even some of the language, were off. With trembling fingers, I pulled up the original file from my secured backup drive. The differences were subtle but unmistakable. Someone had altered my work before it reached the board. Someone had wanted me to fail. I thought about my brother Michael's smirk, the way he had been so quick to condemn my mistake, the way he had positioned himself as the only competent heir to the Harrison empire. My grandfather's voice echoed in my head. "You have no idea what you're throwing away." But maybe I did. Maybe I understood exactly what had happened, and why. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, watching the city lights blur through the rain. 10 years ago, My great-grandfather had passed control of Harrison Industries to my grandfather instead of his older brother, a decision that had shocked the business world. History, it seemed, had a way of repeating itself in our family. My phone buzzed. A text from my grandfather. "Nothing is what it seems, Emma. Watch. Wait. Learn." I took a deep breath, making a decision that would shape the next decade of my life. I would not run to Seattle. I would not fade quietly into obscurity. I would watch. I would wait. And most importantly, I would learn exactly how deep this betrayal went. What my family didn't know, what even my grandfather couldn't have predicted, was that their mistake was about to turn into their worst nightmare. Because the contract I had actually prepared, the one that had been altered without my knowledge, it contained a hidden clause, a small but crucial detail that would only become apparent years later. A detail that would give me control of Harrison Maritime's most valuable assets, right when the family needed them most. I smiled at my reflection in the rain-streaked window. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about failure. Instead, they were about to learn one about underestimating the wrong person. My grandfather's next text arrived just as I was falling asleep. "Remember, dear, in business, as in chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board, even if some fools think she's just a pawn." I didn't understand his message then, but I would. Oh, how I would. 10 years is a long time to wait for revenge. But my grandfather taught me that patience was worth more than gold in the business world, and he was right. I spent the first year building my cover, a small consulting firm in Boston, far enough from New York to avoid family scrutiny, but close enough to keep tabs on Harrison Industries. My grandfather's cryptic messages continued, each one teaching me something new about our family empire. "Watch the shipping manifests for the Singapore route," he would text. Or, "Pay attention to the Anderson merger terms." Small breadcrumbs that helped me understand the bigger picture. The mistake that got me fired? It wasn't just about the maritime division. That contract had been a test. One designed to show the board that I wasn't fit to lead. What my brother Michael hadn't realized was that I had left my own test hidden in the fine print. Clause 23.4, subsection B, buried in the technical specifications. In the event of division restructuring or transfer of assets, original signatory maintains first right of refusal on all Pacific Rim shipping routes and associated infrastructure. A clause that would mean nothing for years, until Harrison Industries decided to restructure their entire shipping operation, which, according to my grandfather's intelligence, was exactly what they were planning. I built my new life carefully, layer by layer. My consulting firm, Phoenix Maritime Solutions, specialized in shipping logistics and port management. We were small but efficient, earning a reputation for solving complex problems that bigger firms couldn't handle. My brother Michael, meanwhile, was living the life of the chosen heir. I watched from afar as he appeared in business magazines, accepting awards and making grand promises about Harrison Industries' future. Our parents beamed in every photo, the perfect corporate family. Only my grandfather seemed to see through the facade. "Your brother's latest acquisition is built on sand," he told me during one of our secret meetings, always in small cafes far from Manhattan. "He's leveraging the company's future on short-term gains." I nodded, stirring my coffee. "The Asian expansion?" "Smoke and mirrors." Grandpa's eyes twinkled. "He's using the Maritime Division's assets as collateral, thinking they're worth more than they are. Because he never understood the real value was in the routes, not the ships," I finished. "Exactly. He reached into his briefcase. Now, about those route licenses coming up for renewal. We spent the next hour reviewing documents that would have made my father's blood pressure spike. My grandfather wasn't just keeping me informed. He was teaching me how to take back what was rightfully mine. The years passed. I grew Phoenix Maritime Solutions into a respected name in the industry, though I stayed carefully out of the spotlight. My employees were handpicked, loyal, and well compensated for their discretion. None of them knew about my connection to Harrison Industries. I dated occasionally, but never seriously. The last man I trusted with my real identity had run straight to my brother with the information. After that, I kept my personal life as carefully controlled as my business one. My parents sent obligatory Christmas cards to my Boston address, cards I never responded to. Each year, they included a note about how well Michael was doing, how the company was thriving under his leadership. I filed each card away in a folder labeled Motivation. Then, 3 years ago, everything started changing. The cracks in Michael's perfect facade began to show. First came the whispers about missed payments to major suppliers. Then rumors of delayed shipments and angry clients. Harrison Industries' stock price, while still strong, showed troubling fluctuations. Your brother mortgaged the company's future, my grandfather explained during what would turn out to be our last meeting. Now those bills are coming due. He looked tired that day, more so than usual. I should have recognized it as a warning sign. The board is starting to ask questions, he continued. About the maritime division especially. The restructuring plan. Will trigger my clause, I finished, if they try to sell off or reorganize the shipping routes. You'll have first right of refusal. He smiled proudly. The clause they never noticed, hidden in the contract they used to destroy you. 2 months later, my grandfather had a stroke. The doctors said it was quick, painless. The official announcement praised him as a titan of industry, the man who built Harrison Industries into a global power. I attended the funeral, of course, standing in the back of the church, watching my family play their roles of grieving heirs. Michael gave a touching eulogy about learning business at our grandfather's knee. I nearly laughed out loud at that. The only thing Michael had learned from Grandpa was how to take credit for other people's work. My parents saw me, but didn't approach. Maybe they were ashamed. More likely, they were worried I would cause a scene. I left before the reception, dragging straight to my lawyer's office. Your grandfather's will reading is scheduled for next week, she informed me. He was very specific about the timing. I nodded, unsurprised. Everything about my grandfather was specific and carefully planned. All major shareholders and family members are required to attend in person, she continued. No proxies allowed. Again, typical Grandpa. He would want everyone there to witness whatever he had planned. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. I reviewed every document, every contract, every piece of information my grandfather had shared over the past decade. Phoenix Maritime Solutions was positioned perfectly, cash reserves high, credit lines secure, relationships with key players solidified. The morning of the will reading, I dressed carefully in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe from my Harrison Industries days. My hair was elegantly styled, my makeup perfect. No one looking at me would see the scared 22-year-old who had fled in the rain 10 years ago. As I drove to the lawyer's office, my phone buzzed with an alert. Harrison Industries stock had dropped another 2 points in early trading. Rumors were swirling about their ability to meet next quarter's obligations. The timing, like everything else about this situation, was perfect. I parked my car and checked my reflection one last time. In my purse was a copy of the original maritime contract, the one with my hidden clause. In my briefcase were documents proving every mistake, every misstep, every bad decision my brother had made while playing corporate emperor. And in my head was 10 years' worth of knowledge about Harrison Industries operations. Knowledge that was about to become very, very valuable. I stepped into the elevator, watching the floor numbers climb. My grandfather's last text message played in my mind. The game is won before the first piece moves. The doors opened onto a floor full of familiar faces frozen in shock. My father dropped his coffee cup. My mother's perfect mask cracked. And my brother Michael, the golden child, the chosen heir, turned white as a sheet. "Hello, family," I said calmly. "Shall we begin?" The conference room at Caldwell and Associates law firm crackled with tension. My family had arranged themselves exactly as I expected. Michael at the head of the table, our parents flanking him like royal advisors. The board members filled the remaining seats, all carefully avoiding my gaze. Mr. Caldwell, my grandfather's personal attorney for over 40 years, cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I should note that Thomas was very specific about the order in which his will should be read. He left detailed instructions." Yes, Michael interrupted. "Can we get on with it? Some of us have a company to run." I bit back a smile. In a few minutes, that statement would be hilariously ironic. Mr. Caldwell opened an envelope, his expression carefully neutral. "Very well. This is the last will and testament of Thomas Harrison AI. The first few items were standard: personal belongings to various family members, charitable donations, arrangements for his staff." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief when he left her his antique jewelry collection. My father nodded approvingly at the size of the charitable endowments. Then came the part everyone was waiting for. Regarding Harrison Industries, Mr. Caldwell paused, adjusting his glasses. "The situation is complex." Michael leaned forward. "Complex how?" The succession plan was clear. As CEO, as interim CEO, Mr. Caldwell corrected. "Your position, like many things, was temporary pending the reading of this will." The room went silent. I watched the color drain from my brother's face as Mr. Caldwell continued reading. "To my grandson, Michael, I leave these words of wisdom. Power without understanding is like a ship without a rudder. You sought control, but never learned why our company worked. You chased growth without appreciating the foundation that supported it. And most tragically, you betrayed your own sister to advance yourself." Michael shot to his feet. "This is ridiculous. I didn't." "Sit down," Mr. Caldwell said firmly. "There's more." He pulled out another document, one I recognized, my original maritime contract. 10 years ago, a contract was deliberately altered to discredit Emma Harrison and force her removal from the company. I have here the original document, along with proof of who made those alterations. My father's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. "That's ancient history. The board's decision was based on falsified evidence," Mr. Caldwell finished. "Evidence that Michael provided after tampering with his sister's work." The board members began murmuring among themselves. I noticed several of them eyeing the exits. Furthermore, Mr. Caldwell continued, "The original contract contained a clause that becomes particularly relevant now. Emma, would you like to explain?" All eyes turned to me. I stood slowly, smoothing my suit jacket. Clause 23.4, subsection B, gives the original signatory, me, first right of refusal on all Pacific Rim shipping routes and associated infrastructure in the event of division restructuring. Which means nothing, Michael snapped. We're not restructuring the maritime division. Actually, I pulled out my phone, displaying the morning stock alerts. You are. The Singapore deal you announced last week? The one meant to save the company from the debt you've accumulated. It can't happen without restructuring the shipping operations. Which means you need my approval. I finished, and you won't get. The room erupted in chaos. Board members were already on their phones, likely calling their lawyers. My mother had actual tears running down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. My father looked like he might have a stroke. Mr. Caldwell raised his voice over the din. There's more. From his briefcase, he produced a thick folder. Thomas Harrison's majority shareholding in Harrison Industries is hereby transferred in its entirety to his granddaughter, Emma Harrison. The silence that followed was deafening. Additionally, he continued, all voting rights associated with the family trust shares are to be exercised by Emma Harrison, effective immediately. Michael collapsed back into his chair. This can't be legal. Dad, do something. But our father was staring at another document Mr. Caldwell had placed on the table, a detailed report of Harrison Industries' finances under Michael's leadership. Your grandfather spent the last 10 years documenting every mistake, every poor decision, every instance of mismanagement. Mr. Caldwell explained. He worked closely with Emma to understand the true state of the company while you were all believing your own press releases. I stepped forward, placing my own folder on the table. Phoenix Maritime Solutions, my company, has spent years building relationships with the clients you've been neglecting. We've secured contracts you didn't even know were available. And now you own us, my father whispered. No, I corrected. I own what's mine. What should have been mine 10 years ago, before you chose to believe lies over truth? Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat. There's one final item. A letter Thomas wanted read aloud. He opened a sealed envelope and began reading. To my family. Power doesn't come from titles or boardroom theatrics. It comes from understanding your business, your people, and most importantly, yourself. 10 years ago, you cast aside the one person who truly understood what made Harrison Industries work. You chose flash over substance, greed over growth, betrayal over loyalty. Emma didn't just survive your betrayal, she thrived despite it. While you were all watching Michael play CEO, she was learning every aspect of this industry. She built her own success while watching you destroy your inheritance. Consider this my final lesson in business. True leadership isn't about who can grab power fastest. It's about who can wield it wisely. Emma, the company is yours. Make it what it should have been all along. To the rest of you, learn from this if you can. With love and disappointment in equal measure, Thomas Harrison A.E. Michael was the first to break the silence. You planned this. All of it. You and Grandpa. No, I cut him off. You planned this the day you decided to forge documents to destroy my career. Grandpa and I just made sure you'd face the consequences. I turned to the board members. A car is waiting outside to take you to Phoenix Maritime's offices. My team will brief you on the restructuring plan we've developed. Those who wish to remain with the company will have the opportunity to prove their value. Those who don't, I smiled. Well, I hear my brother will be looking for work soon. You can't just walk in here and take over, my father protested weakly. Actually, that's exactly what I'm doing. I gathered my documents. The shareholders' meeting is in 1 hour. I suggest you all decide whose side you're on before then. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Michael? Clear out your office by 5. I'm moving in tomorrow. The next few weeks were exactly what you'd expect when a decade of mismanagement comes to light. The press had a field day with the story. Harrison Harris returns. The greatest corporate comeback in history was my personal favorite headline. The shareholders, seeing the detailed plans I'd developed with my grandfather, overwhelmingly supported the transition. Harrison Industries' stock price stabilized, then began to climb as we implemented changes. Michael, predictably, tried to sue. His case fell apart when our father, finally facing the truth about his chosen heir, testified about the document forgery from 10 years ago. My mother attempted reconciliation in her own way. Lunch invitations, shopping offers, suggestions that we should all just move forward as a family. I declined every invitation. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. 1 month after taking control, I stood in my grandfather's old office, my office now, looking out over the city. On my desk sat the contract that had started everything, framed as a reminder that sometimes losing is just winning in disguise. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a photo of my grandfather, taken the day he caught Michael altering my work. He'd kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment. Below the photo was a message, scheduled to be sent after his death. The Queen has taken her throne. Checkmate, my dear. Checkmate. I smiled, touching the frame of that old contract. The family that cast me out had thought they were ending my story. Instead, they had only written its beginning. And now, finally, they understood exactly what they had thrown away. The Wilson family's annual reunion was exactly as suffocating as I remembered. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead in my aunt's oversized mansion, reflecting off designer dresses and expensive watches. The air was thick with the peculiar mix of expensive perfume and superiority that seemed to follow my relatives everywhere they went. I stood in the corner, watching my cousins compete for attention with stories of their latest achievements. My simple black dress, carefully chosen to help me blend into the background, felt like armor against their judgment. Olivia, my Aunt Patricia's voice cut through the chatter. I almost didn't see you there. Still working as a secretary, dear. I took a small sip of champagne, hiding my smile behind the glass. Administrative assistant, actually. Oh, she raised a perfectly manicured eyebrow. Still at that little consulting firm? What was it called again? Summit Solutions, I replied quietly. My cousin Ethan, fresh from making partner at his father's law firm, couldn't resist joining in. Come on, Liv. I could get you a real job, something with actual career potential. I thought about the stack of contracts waiting for my signature back at my office. My real office, not the carefully maintained cover I showed the world. I'm happy where I am, thanks. Happy? Aunt Patricia's laugh could have cut glass. Darling, you're wasting your potential. Your cousins are all executives, partners, real business people, and you're still pushing paper for someone else. If only they knew that someone else was me. The story of how I built my empire in secret started 10 years ago, in this very house. I was fresh out of business school, armed with an MBA and a revolutionary idea for restructuring failing companies. I'd spent months perfecting my pitch, convinced that my family's vast business connections would help launch my career. Instead, they laughed. Consulting? Uncle Robert had scoffed. Leave that to the big firms, girl. Join the family business. Start in the mailroom. Work your way up like everyone else. Everyone else meant my male cousins, of course. The Wilson family's idea of success was strictly defined and strictly controlled. They'd built their fortune through a network of companies, each headed by a carefully chosen male heir. Women were expected to marry well or take subordinate positions, nothing more. That night, I made two decisions that would change everything. First, I would build my own company without their help or knowledge. Second, I would make them regret every dismissive word. Summit Solutions began in a tiny office above a Chinese restaurant. My savings covered the rent, barely. But I had something more valuable than money. I understood how companies worked, how they failed, and most importantly, how to fix them. My first client was a small manufacturing firm on the verge of bankruptcy. The owner had been turned down by every major consulting firm in the city. I spent 3 months restructuring their operations, streamlining processes, and negotiating with creditors. 6 months later, they were profitable again. Word spread quietly through business circles about the mysterious consulting firm that could save dying companies. I hired carefully, choosing people who shared my vision and my discretion. Every employee signed ironclad NDAs. My name never appeared on any public documents. I was simply the CEO. As Summit Solutions grew, I maintained my cover as a low-level employee. I kept the tiny office above the restaurant, even as we expanded into a sleek downtown headquarters. When family members asked about my job, I described mundane administrative tasks, watching their eyes glaze over with disinterest. The deception wasn't just about pride, it was strategy. The Wilson family's business empire was built on acquiring struggling companies at rock-bottom prices. My firm's specialty was saving those same companies before they became vulnerable to hostile takeovers. We worked in the shadows, quietly thwarting my family's predatory practices while building our own success. Now, 10 years later, Summit Solutions was one of the most influential consulting firms in the industry. We had offices in 12 cities, a client list that included Fortune 500 companies, and a reputation for turning failing businesses into success stories. And not one of my smirking relatives had any idea. "More champagne, dear." Aunt Patricia's voice yanked me back to the present. "Though perhaps you should stick to water. I imagine your salary doesn't leave much room for expensive tastes." I accepted the champagne with a practiced smile. "Thank you, Aunt Patricia. How's Uncle Robert's new acquisition going?" "Williams Manufacturing, wasn't it?" Her smile faltered slightly. "There have been some complications. Nothing Robert can't handle, of course." What she didn't know was that those complications were my doing. Williams Manufacturing had been a target of my uncle's hostile takeover attempt. They'd reached out to Summit Solutions 3 months ago, desperate for help. Now they were implementing our restructuring plan, their stock price was rising, and Uncle Robert's attempt to seize control was falling apart. "I heard they hired some consulting firm," my cousin Ethan added. "Probably throwing good money after bad. Those consultants are all the same. Big promises, no results." I hid another smile. Summit Solutions' fee for saving Williams Manufacturing was more than Ethan would make in 5 years at his father's firm. "Oh, which firm?" "Summit something," he waved dismissively. "Nobody important. Dad says their CEO won't even show their face. Probably some trust fund kid playing at business." My phone buzzed in my clutch. A message from my actual assistant. "Emergency meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Wilson Ventures representatives requesting merger discussion Williams Manufacturing. Urgent response needed." I scanned the message twice, realization dawning. They were finally admitting defeat with Williams Manufacturing. After failing to acquire the company, they were now seeking a merger, which would require approval from Williams' consulting firm. My firm. Tomorrow morning, my family would walk into a meeting expecting to strong-arm their way into a merger. Instead, they would find themselves facing the secretary they dismissed for the past decade. Except I wouldn't be bringing coffee. I would be sitting at the head of the table. "Everything all right, dear?" Aunt Patricia asked, noticing my expression. I finished my champagne and gave her my brightest smile. "Perfect, actually. I should head home. Early meeting tomorrow." "Oh? Taking notes for someone important?" "Something like that," I replied, already planning what I would wear. Something exactly like that. The next morning, I stood in my private elevator, ascending to Summit Solutions' executive floor. Gone was the simple black dress from last night's reunion. Today, I wore a tailored channel suit in deep navy, a power color for a power move. My assistant, Maya, waited at the elevator doors with a tablet and knowing smile. The Wilson Ventures team arrived early, she reported as we walked. "Your uncle seems particularly anxious to meet Summit's CEO." "I'm sure he is." I checked my reflection in a glass wall. Perfect. Are they in the main conference room? Yes, along with Mr. Harrison from Williams Manufacturing. Maya's eyes sparkled with anticipation. "Your cousin Ethan is there too." Apparently, he insisted on handling the legal aspects personally. I smiled, remembering Ethan's condescending offer of a real job just yesterday. "Who else from the family?" "Your Aunt Patricia came as moral support, though she's not officially part of the meeting. And your cousin James, he's representing Wilson Ventures' finance department." A perfect audience. I checked my watch. 8:57 a.m. Had they been served coffee? Your aunt complained that there was no one to serve it. Maya's grin widened. I told them the administrative assistant would be in shortly. I almost laughed. For 10 years, I'd played the role of invisible support staff whenever family members visited the office. They never looked closely at the quiet woman who brought their coffee or took their coats. It had been the perfect cover. "Give me 2 minutes," I said, "then bring in the contracts." I could hear voices through the conference room's heavy doors. My uncle's authoritative tone, Aunt Patricia's sharp laugh, Ethan's smug commentary. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the doors open. The conversation stopped abruptly. My uncle sat at one end of the long table, apparently having assumed the power position. Ethan and James flanked him, both in expensive suits that screamed family money. Aunt Patricia perched nearby, examining her manicure with practiced disinterest. Mr. Harrison from Williams Manufacturing sat alone on the other side, looking uncomfortable. Finally, Aunt Patricia sighed. "We've been waiting for coffee for..." She stopped, really looking at me for the first time. "Olivia? What are you wearing? And why aren't you carrying coffee?" I walked calmly to the head of the table, the seat directly opposite Uncle Robert. "I don't serve coffee anymore, Aunt Patricia. In fact, I never really did." "What is this?" Uncle Robert demanded. "Where is Summit's CEO? We were promised a meeting with the actual decision-maker." "You have been." I sat down, enjoying the confusion on their faces. "I am the CEO of Summit Solutions. I have been since I founded the company 10 years ago." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. James dropped his pen. Aunt Patricia's perfectly maintained composure cracked. Uncle Robert recovered first, his face reddening. "This is absurd. You're a secretary." "No, I said calmly. That was a cover. A very effective one, apparently, since none of you ever looked past it. You were so convinced I couldn't be successful that you never noticed I already was. Maya chose that moment to enter with a stack of contracts. She distributed them efficiently, then took her place standing behind my chair. These documents, I continued, outline the terms under which Summit Solutions will consider approving the merger between Wilson Ventures and Williams Manufacturing. Consider approving? Ethan sputtered. You can't be serious. This is a joke, right? Some kind of elaborate prank? I pulled out my phone and projected Summit's latest financial statements onto the wall screen. Summit Solutions currently manages over $12 billion in client assets. We have a 94% success rate in corporate restructuring, and our approval is required for any major changes to Williams Manufacturing's business structure. I smiled at my stunned relatives. Does that look like a joke to you? This is impossible, Aunt Patricia whispered. You're nothing. You've always been nothing. That's exactly what you were meant to think. I turned to Mr. Harrison. Would you like to explain to my family why you chose Summit Solutions over Wilson Ventures' original offer? Mr. Harrison straightened in his chair. Summit's reputation is unparalleled. When Wilson Ventures attempted their hostile takeover, Summit's restructuring plan saved our company. We've increased profits by 47% since implementing their strategies. Restructuring plan? James looked like he might faint. The plan that destroyed our acquisition attempt, that was you, among others. I began listing cases on my fingers. Peterson Electronics, which you tried to acquire last year. Maritime Shipping, which you underbid on last quarter. The Davidson Group, which mysteriously recovered just before you could buy them out. I leaned forward. For 10 years, I've been quietly undermining every predatory acquisition attempt your company has made. Uncle Robert's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. You deliberately sabotaged family business. No, I corrected. I built my own business, one that helps companies survive instead of devouring them for parts. The fact that it interfered with your plans was just karmic bonus. This is ridiculous, Ethan declared, standing up. I'm calling our lawyers. Sit down, Ethan. My voice carried an authority that made him freeze. You really should read those contracts in front of you, the ones your firm spent months trying to secure for this meeting. I watched realization dawn on his face. That's right. Your law firm's biggest client this year. That was me too. Maya stepped forward with another document. This is a summary of Summit's current market position and liquid assets. You'll note that we're now in a position to acquire controlling interest in Wilson Ventures if we choose. The room erupted in chaos. Aunt Patricia was practically hyperventilating. James was frantically checking the numbers on his phone. Ethan had collapsed back into his chair, looking shell-shocked. This is blackmail, Uncle Robert growled. No, I said quietly. This is business. The kind you taught me, I'd never be capable of handling. I stood up, smoothing my jacket. You have until 5 p.m. today to review the merger terms. They're very generous, considering our position. If you decline, Summit Solutions will begin purchasing Wilson Ventures stock on the open market tomorrow morning. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Aunt Patricia, that champagne you so graciously offered me last night. I own the vineyard that produces it. Bought it last year. The coffee you were so desperate for this morning. That chain too. I smiled sweetly. Turns out my salary does leave room for expensive tastes after all. The door closed behind me on their stunned faces. In my private office, I finally allowed myself a moment to process what had just happened. 10 years of careful deception, of playing the invisible underachiever, had led to this moment. Maya appeared with a real cup of coffee, my favorite blend from my own coffee chain. Was it worth the wait? I thought about all the times I'd served coffee in this very office, watching my family dismiss me, underestimate me, write me off as nothing more than a secretary. Every single second. My phone buzzed. Messages already pouring in from family members who must have heard about the meeting. I silenced it without looking. They'd have plenty of time to process their new reality. Right now, I had an empire to run. And for the first time in 10 years, I could finally do it without hiding who I really was. The next 48 hours were exactly what you'd expect when a family built on power and appearances suddenly discovers they're not at the top of the food chain anymore. The messages started pouring in almost immediately after the meeting. Aunt Patricia, darling, let's discuss this over lunch. You always were my favorite niece. Ethan, come on, Liv. We were just joking around. Family should stick together. James, you can't do this to us. We're blood. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the rapid-fire emails from Wilson Ventures board members. They weren't stupid. They could see which way the wind was blowing. By noon, they had scheduled an emergency board meeting. By 3, they had voted to accept Summit's merger terms. Uncle Robert, predictably, didn't go quietly. You've betrayed this family. His voice echoed through my office as he barged in unannounced. Maya moved to intervene, but I waved her off. Let him have his moment. Actually, I said, not looking up from my computer, I'd say I learned from this family. Isn't this exactly what you taught us? Seize power, eliminate competition, never show weakness. We gave you everything. That made me laugh. You gave me nothing, less than nothing. You taught me that I would never be good enough, that my only value was in supporting the men in the family. So I'd built something better. By deceiving everyone for a decade, I finally looked up at him. By letting you deceive yourselves, you saw exactly what you expected to see. A quiet, unambitious woman who knew her place. That was your mistake, not mine. The fight seemed to drain out of him suddenly. He sank into one of my visitor chairs, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Why reveal yourself now? You could have continued operating in secret. Because it was time. I closed my laptop. Williams Manufacturing isn't the only company you're trying to acquire. There's Thompson Electronics, Maritime Solutions, at least 3 others. Companies with good people, solid products, that just need help restructuring. I'm tired of watching you destroy them. It's business, he protested weakly. No, it's greed, and it stops now. I handed him a folder. These are the final merger terms. Summit Solutions will acquire a controlling interest in Wilson Ventures. We'll restructure the company to focus on building businesses up, not tearing them down. You can stay on as a consultant if you accept the new direction. If not, your golden parachute is outlined on page 3. He opened the folder with trembling hands. You thought of everything. I learned from the best. I smiled without warmth, though not in the way you intended. After he left, Maya brought in a stack of newspapers. Summit's revelation was already making headlines. Secret CEO revealed how one woman built a billion-dollar empire in secret. Wilson family shocked. The hidden success story they never saw coming. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message that actually mattered. My mother, who had divorced Uncle Robert's brother years ago, and distanced herself from the Wilson family's toxicity, had sent a single line, "I always knew you would show them." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. Wilson Ventures board enthusiastically embraced Summit's new direction. Their stock price jumped 40% on the announcement of the merger. Companies that had feared the Wilson name now sought partnerships. The press couldn't get enough of the story. Aunt Patricia tried to spin it as a heartwarming family success story. "We always knew Olivia had potential," she told one reporter. "This just proves that the Wilson spirit of entrepreneurship runs in the blood." I responded by releasing archived video of last year's family reunion, where she had spent 20 minutes explaining to everyone why I would never amount to anything. The footage went viral. She stopped giving interviews after that. Ethan attempted damage control in his own way, claiming he had been in on it all along. Unfortunately for him, too many people had witnessed his shocked face in that conference room. His law firm's other clients began questioning his judgment. Within a month, he was quietly asked to take a leave of absence. James adapted the fastest, approaching me with a business proposal just 2 weeks after the revelation. We could dominate the market together, he suggested over an awkward lunch. The Wilson Summit Alliance would be unstoppable. "That's not what Summit Solutions is about," I told him. "We don't dominate, we elevate." The real changes came in the quieter moments. The young intern who tearfully thanked me for showing her that success didn't require compromising her principles. The female executives who started reaching out, sharing their own stories of being underestimated. The business schools that invited me to speak about building ethical success in a cutthroat world. 3 months after the revelation, I stood on a stage accepting the Business Innovation Award. Looking out at the audience, I saw my mother sitting in the front row, beaming with pride. Behind her sat several of my former administrative assistants, all women who had helped maintain my cover while building their own careers within Summit. "Success isn't about who has the most power," I told the crowd. "It's about how you use the power you have." For 10 years, I played a role that made powerful people underestimate me. I could have revealed myself sooner, but I chose to wait until Summit Solutions was strong enough to create real change. The applause was thunderous, but the real satisfaction came later that evening. I was working late in my office when Maya brought in an interesting piece of news. Uncle Robert had just announced his retirement. His resignation letter included an unexpected paragraph. "My niece taught me that true business success isn't measured in acquisitions or assets, but in the positive impact we create. I regret that it took losing control of my company to learn this lesson." I leaned back in my chair, thinking about the long game I had played. 10 years of careful planning, of swallowing pride and playing small, had led to this moment. Summit Solutions wasn't just successful, it was changing how business was done. The next family reunion would certainly be interesting. I planned to host it myself, in Summit's main conference room. The same room where I had served coffee countless times, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to show them who I really was. Maya knocked on my door. "Your 4 p.m. is here," the CEO of Thomson Electronics, the company your uncle was trying to acquire. I smiled. "Show them in." And Maya? "Bring coffee for everyone. The good stuff from our chain." As I stood to greet my visitors, I caught my reflection in the window. No more hiding, no more playing small. I had built something remarkable, not despite my family's dismissal, but because of it. They had taught me that power doesn't always look like what people expect. Sometimes it looks like a quiet woman in a simple black dress, serving coffee and taking notes, while building an empire right under everyone's nose. The tabloids called it revenge. The business papers called it strategic genius. But for me, it was simply justice, served one corporate takeover at a time, with a side of perfectly brewed coffee. And somewhere, in a small office above a Chinese restaurant, my original desk still sits. I keep it as a reminder that success doesn't always wear designer labels or demand attention. Sometimes it works quietly, patiently, building something extraordinary while the world looks the other way. That's the real secret to success, not the power you show, but the power you build when no one's watching. Everyone gather around. My stepmother's voice carried across the marble foyer of the Sullivan mansion. Time for the annual family photo. I watched from my corner as they assembled. My father in his perfectly tailored suit, my stepmother Victoria directing everyone into position, my stepbrothers Marcus and Andrew preening in their matching blazers. The photographer adjusted his lights, preparing to capture another perfect moment in the Sullivan family's carefully curated history. Sophia. Victoria's eyes landed on me with familiar disdain. Be a dear and adjust the curtains. The light's all wrong. At 28, I was still being treated like the help instead of family. But I didn't argue. I simply nodded and moved to the windows, knowing I wouldn't be invited into the frame. I hadn't been part of a family photo since I was 8 years old. Since Victoria had married my father and decided the daughter from his first marriage didn't fit her vision of the perfect family. Perfect, the photographer exclaimed. The Sullivans really are America's perfect business dynasty. If only they knew. Behind my quiet exterior, I smiled slightly. They had no idea that the security cameras recording this moment, like every moment in the Sullivan mansion, belonged to my company. No idea that their perfect facade was being archived on my servers, every secret and lie cataloged and time-stamped. 20 years of exclusion had taught me something valuable. The best place to observe is from the shadows. It started the day Victoria moved in. I was 8, still grieving my mother's death, when this former beauty queen swept into our lives with her 2 sons and her plans for the perfect blended family. Plans that, it quickly became clear, didn't include me. First came the accidental exclusions from family events. Then the separate dining arrangements. I wasn't ready for formal family dinners. By the time I was 12, I was essentially living in the guest wing, attended by staff, but otherwise forgotten. My father, consumed by running Sullivan Enterprises, didn't notice or didn't care. He was too busy grooming Marcus and Andrew to take over the company, too enchanted by Victoria's social connections to see what was happening to his own daughter. But being invisible had advantages. No one noticed when I started spending time with George, the head of mansion security. He taught me about camera systems, access controls, the invisible web of technology that protected the wealthy. No one cared when I chose to study cybersecurity in college instead of business like my stepbrothers. At least she's learning a trade. Victoria had sniffed when I announced my major. Someone has to manage the help. I graduated summa cum laude. No one from my family attended the ceremony. That same year, I founded Sentinel Security Solutions, though not under my own name. The company documents listed Sarah Chen as the founder and CEO. My college roommate had been happy to play the role of public face, understanding what I was building. Because while Victoria was busy planning galas, and Marcus and Andrew were playing at being executives, I was creating something powerful, starting with small contracts, building a reputation for excellence and discretion. Sentinel Security grew rapidly. The wealthy love their privacy, and they'll pay handsomely to protect it. Within 5 years, Sentinel was providing security for half of New York's elite, including, through a series of shell companies and subsidiaries, the Sullivan family. Victoria herself had insisted on upgrading the mansion's security after a series of high-profile home invasions in their social circle. She never looked closely at the company's ownership, never questioned why their bid was slightly lower than competitors. And so I watched. Every meeting, every private conversation, every backroom deal, all captured and stored on my secure servers. I saw Marcus embezzling from the company accounts, Andrew's drug habits and gambling debts, Victoria's secret meetings with business rivals. Most importantly, I saw my father's transformation from respected businessman to willing participant in corporate fraud. The perfect family's perfect facade was built on lies, corruption, and stolen money, and I had proof of all of it. Safia. Victoria's sharp voice pulled me from my thoughts. Stop dawdling with those curtains. We have guests coming for the foundation dinner. The foundation, Victoria's pride and joy, the Sullivan Family Charitable Foundation. On paper, it supported children's education. In reality, it was a sophisticated money laundering operation. The security cameras had captured plenty of evidence of that too. Yes, Victoria, I said quietly, adjusting the curtains one final time. As the photographer packed up his equipment, my phone buzzed with an alert from Sentinel's monitoring system. Another suspicious transfer from the foundation's accounts. $3 million moved through a series of shell companies before disappearing into an offshore account. I added it to my growing file of evidence. The question wasn't if I would expose them, but when. That evening's foundation dinner was exactly what you'd expect. Wealthy donors writing checks, Victoria making tearful speeches about helping underprivileged children, Marcus and Andrew working the room like the corporate princes they pretended to be. I stood in my usual corner, watching the security feeds on my tablet. Every camera angle perfect, every conversation recorded in crystal clear audio. Quite an operation you're running. I turned to find James Carter beside me, the FBI's lead investigator for financial crimes, though no one at the party knew that. He was here undercover, investigating rumors of corporate fraud at Sullivan Enterprises. I don't run anything, I said carefully. I just manage the security systems. He smiled slightly. Ms. Chen, you mean? Or should I say Ms. Sullivan? My heart stopped. I don't know what you're talking about. Relax. He sipped his champagne. Your secret's safe. We've been watching Sentinel Security for months. Very impressive work. Almost as impressive as the evidence you've been collecting. I studied him carefully. What do you want? Partnership. We're building a case, but your surveillance records would make it airtight. Together, we cooled. Safia. Victoria's voice cut through the crowd. Stop chatting and check the cameras in the East Wing. I thought I saw a light flickering. I gave James a bland smile. Duty calls. Excuse me. As I walked away, my mind was racing. The FBI was watching. The perfect family's perfect crime was about to unravel, and I had a decision to make. That night, after the guests had gone and the mansion was quiet, I sat in my private office, hidden away in the guest wing where no one ever visited. On my screens, the security feeds showed different scenes. Marcus in his study, shredding documents. Andrew making frantic phone calls to his bookie. Victoria in the garden, having a heated argument with someone on her phone. And my father. My father sat alone in his office, staring at an old photograph. I zoomed in the camera. It was a picture of him and my mother, holding a baby. Me. Before Victoria, before the perfect facade, before everything went wrong. For a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. Could I really destroy them all? Then I remembered 20 years of exclusion, 20 years of being treated like a ghost in my own home, 20 years of watching them steal and lie and corrupt everything they touched. I opened my laptop and began composing an email to James Carter. The subject line was simple: evidence attached. The perfect family was about to learn that the person they tried to erase had been watching all along. And I had seen everything. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in watching people unravel. I monitored it all through my security feeds, watching each family member react to the first tremors of their world collapsing. It started with a phone call to Marcus from the company's chief financial officer. The SEC is asking questions. The CFO's voice crackled through my perfectly placed microphones. They're auditing all foundation transactions from the past 5 years. Marcus paced his office, running hands through his perfectly styled hair. Stall them. Use the usual procedures. They've frozen the offshore accounts. All of them. I watched the color drain from my stepbrother's face as he realized their usual escape routes were closed. In another feed, I saw Andrew receiving similar news from his private banker. All his secret accounts, the ones he used for gambling debts and drug payments, were suddenly inaccessible. Victoria took longer to notice something was wrong. She was too busy planning the foundation's next gala, ordering staff around with her usual imperial manner, until her personal assistant interrupted with an urgent message. "Mrs. Sullivan? The New York Times is on the line. They're asking for comment about allegations of money laundering through the foundation." I zoomed in on Victoria's face just in time to catch her perfect mask crack. For a split second, real fear showed through. My father was the last to know. I watched through the camera in his office as Marcus burst in, waving his phone. "Dad, we have a problem. Someone's talking to the feds. Someone who knows everything." For the first time in years, I saw my father look old, tired. "What do you mean? Everything?" "The foundation, the offshore accounts, the fake contracts, all of it. They have documentation, video recordings, audio files." My father's eyes narrowed. "Video recordings?" From our own security systems. Marcus was practically shouting now. "Every meeting, every conversation, it's all been recorded." I smiled, watching my father's face as realization dawned. He looked straight at the camera in his office, the one he'd never paid attention to before. For a moment, I thought I saw recognition in his eyes. Then Victoria swept in, already in damage control mode. I called the lawyers, all of them, and the PR team. "We need to present a united front." She looked around the office. "Where's Sophia?" My father frowned. "What does Sophia have to do with this?" "She manages the security systems." Victoria snapped. "If someone's been accessing our cameras." "You mean the cameras you insisted we upgrade?" My father's voice was quiet. "The contract you pushed through without review." Victoria's perfect composure slipped again. "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing." He turned to stare out the window. "Nothing at all." I switched feeds to the mansion's entrance just in time to see 3 black SUVs pull up. FBI agents emerged, led by James Carter. "Right on schedule," I murmured. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah Chin, my public face at Sentinel Security. "They're moving on all locations simultaneously. 15 federal warrants being executed right now." I sent back a thumbs up, then switched my attention to the main foyer camera. Victoria was trying to prevent the agents from entering, waving papers from her lawyers. "This is harassment. We're upstanding members of the community." "Mrs. Sullivan." James Carter's voice was polite but firm. We have warrants for the arrest of Marcus and Andrew Sullivan on charges of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. We also have a warrant to seize all electronic devices and security recordings from the premises. Security recordings? Victoria's voice rose an octave. But those belong to Sentinel Security. You can't. Actually, Carter smiled slightly. We have full cooperation from Sentinel's CEO, Ms. Chin. Or should I say? He looked directly into the nearest camera. Ms. Sullivan? The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Victoria's face as she processed what he'd said, as she finally understood who had been watching all along. No, she whispered. That's impossible. She's nothing. She's no one. She, my father said quietly, is my daughter, the one you told me to forget. I switched feeds again, watching as agents led Marcus and Andrew out in handcuffs. My stepbrothers were shouting about lawyers, about family loyalty, about how this must be some mistake. But my attention was on my father. He stood in his office, staring at that old photograph again. Then he did something that surprised me. He walked to the camera and spoke directly into it. I'm sorry, Sophia. I should have seen what was happening. Should have protected you. He paused, then added softly, Your mother would be ashamed of what I've become. For the first time since I started this, I felt tears in my eyes. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Sarah. They found the Foundation's real books. Victoria's being arrested too. I watched through the cameras as they led my stepmother out. Her perfect hair was mussed, her designer outfit wrinkled. She was crying, mascara running down her cheeks. This is your fault, she screamed at my father. You and your precious first wife's daughter. We gave you everything. The perfect family. The perfect image. Perfect. My father's laugh was bitter. We destroyed the only perfect thing I had, and now we're paying for it. I switched off the feed, letting my screens go dark. 20 years of watching, waiting, and recording had led to this moment. The perfect family's crimes were exposed. Their empire was crumbling. But as I sat in my hidden office, listening to the chaos below, I realized this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning, because I had one more card to play. One final revelation that would change everything. And this time, I wouldn't be watching from the shadows. This time, I would step into the light. The Sullivan mansion felt different without the perfect family. Empty rooms echoed with memories. Security cameras watching silently as federal agents boxed up evidence of 2 decades of fraud. I sat in my father's office, now my office, reviewing the final piece of evidence I hadn't turned over to the FBI. A video from 15 years ago, captured by the old security system. The one Victoria had insisted on replacing with my company's equipment. On the screen, my father and Victoria stood in this very room, arguing about me. She's becoming a problem, Victoria said, pacing in agitation. She's too smart, asks too many questions. She'll figure out what we're doing with the Foundation. My father looked tired, already beaten down. She's my daughter, Victoria, my only link to Catherine. Your dead wife isn't here anymore. Victoria snapped. I am. And I'm telling you, either the girl goes to boarding school, or our arrangement ends. Choose. I watched my father's face as he made the choice that would shape all our lives. I'll make the arrangements. 2 weeks later, I was shipped off to a boarding school in Switzerland. The perfect solution. Far enough away that I couldn't interfere with their schemes, but expensive enough to maintain the family's charitable image. What they hadn't counted on was that my exile would give me exactly what I needed: distance, perspective, and time to plan. My phone buzzed. James Carter calling. The DA is offering deals, he said without preamble. Marcus and Andrew are ready to flip on Victoria. They're claiming she masterminded everything. I smiled. And the evidence I sent this morning? Game changer. Victoria's lawyers are already reaching out for plea negotiations. The evidence in question was devastating. Videos of Victoria meeting with known money launderers. Audio recordings of her threatening employees who asked questions. Paper trails showing her systematic looting of the foundation. What about my father? I asked quietly. Carter sighed. He's cooperating fully. His lawyer thinks with his age and health, he might avoid jail time. But the company will need new leadership, I finished. Because that was my final card. The one I'd been holding back until now. While Victoria had been busy destroying the family's legitimate business, I had been quietly buying shares through various shell companies, combined with my father's shares, which would be forfeited under the plea agreement. I now controlled 51% of Sullivan Enterprises. The prodigal daughter wasn't just back. She owned everything. A knock at the office door made me look up. My father stood there, looking older than his 65 years. The FBI said, "I'd find you here," he said softly. I gestured to the chair across from me. He sat down heavily, his eyes moving to the security camera in the corner. "All these years," he murmured, "you were watching, building your own empire while we destroyed ours." "Not destroying," I corrected, "transforming. Sullivan Enterprises can be legitimate again, ethical." He studied my face, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in 20 years. "You look so much like your mother. She would have been proud." Would she? I turned my laptop so he could see the old video still playing. "Proud that you chose Victoria's schemes over your own daughter." He flinched. I was weak, afraid of losing everything if Victoria exposed my early frauds to the board. But in trying to protect our wealth, I lost something far more valuable. Your soul, my daughter. Silence filled the room. Through the windows, I could see federal agents leading the last of Victoria's conspirators out of the mansion. I reviewed the plea agreement. I said finally, "You'll avoid prison by forfeiting your shares and testifying against Victoria. The company will need a new CEO." He nodded wearily. "Marcus and Andrew are going to prison. Victoria will follow. It's over." "No," I said quietly. "It's just beginning." I handed him a folder. My plans for restructuring Sullivan Enterprises, clean energy investments, technological innovation, legitimate charitable work. Everything the company could have been without Victoria's corruption. "You're taking over," he said. It wasn't a question. "I own controlling interest now. The board votes tomorrow, but it's a formality. The real question is, will you help me?" He looked surprised. "You want my help? After everything?" "Not as CEO. Not even as an executive. But as my father." I met his eyes. "If you're ready to be that again." For the first time in 20 years, I saw tears in his eyes. "I don't deserve a second chance." "No," I agreed, "but I deserve a father. And this company deserves a chance to be something better than what Victoria made it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Victoria, facing overwhelming evidence, accepted a plea deal, 20 years in federal prison. Marcus and Andrew got lighter sentences in exchange for their cooperation, but they would still spend years behind bars. The board voted unanimously to accept my leadership, especially after I presented evidence that Sentinel Securities' profits could help offset the losses from the foundation's collapse. My father, true to his word, took a humble role as an advisor. Each morning, he would arrive early to help me review contracts and strategic plans. Each evening, we would have dinner together, just the two of us, rebuilding 2 decades of lost time. 1 month after taking control, I stood in the mansion's foyer, watching a different kind of photo shoot. This one was for Forbes magazine, a cover story about the transformation of Sullivan Enterprises. Ms. Sullivan, the photographer called. "Would you like your father in this shot?" I looked at the man who had once chosen wealth and power over his own daughter. He stood uncertainly to the side, just as I had done so many times before. "Yes," I said, "I would." As we posed together, I caught our reflection in the window. Behind us, the security camera watched silently. No longer a tool for exposing crimes, but a reminder of how I had turned my exile into strength. The perfect family was gone. In its place was something real, imperfect, complicated, but honest. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from James Carter. Victoria's appeals were denied. It's really over. I smiled, looking at my father as he proudly straightened his tie for the photo. "No," I whispered, "it's just beginning." Because sometimes the person they try to erase becomes the person who writes the ending. And in this ending, the forgotten daughter didn't just survive, she triumphed. The security cameras had seen everything, but more importantly, they had shown me who I really was. Not a victim, not an outcast, but a woman strong enough to turn 20 years of exclusion into an empire of her own. And this time, I wasn't just in the family photo. I was the one taking it.